Diesel, it was just a day ago you and I were talking about Paul Finebaum, and you know that I am not a big fan of old Paulie F.
He's entertaining as hell.
I don't like him. I don't like Paul Finebaum. And now today, thank you, Lane Kiffin, for number one, giving us a very good lead for the show. And also thank you, number two, Lane Kiffin, for blasting Paul Finebaum, putting him on notice, saying what everyone else has always wanted to say about Paul Finebaum. Just earlier today, Lane Kiffin Diesel goes in on Paulie F. This is what he had to say. The audio, just so you know, is not going to be the best, but I'm going to try my best to bump it up a little for you.
Game day, you had to make your big splash, and they were watching it because I know the other person in the room that was watching it with them. And you said what a joke I was, and I'm the Miley Cyrus of college football coaching, and I should be fired. And they looked at each other, and later that night I was fired.
Yeah, by the way.
So, but hey, look what happened. I would have never gotten to work for Coach Saban. All these other things wouldn't happen. So I appreciate you for helping getting me fired. Thank you.
Look at what you're doing today. You're predicted to go to the play. Look at Miley Cyrus. She's had a nice comeback.
So you're wrong on that. I mean, you put me down with that. So really, I don't really know what you're good at. Like you predicted that Coach Saban was done. That didn't happen. You basically said Miley Cyrus stinks, and she's still going.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're good at, says Lane Kiffin.
Lane.
I love Lane Kiffin, man. Like, how can you be a college football fan, Diesel, and not like this guy?
He is the driest, but at the same time, snarkiest, messy diva in college football. I love it.
I think he gets a lot of that from Saban.
Yeah.
I really do. Because Saban was quiet and snarky, but I don't think Saban was as, I don't want to say flamboyant, but Lane will just go right at you. Lane will just go right for the jugular. And that's what I love about him, man.
Yeah. If
He's
he just throw in a
fantastic.
couple of more "ites,"
Yeah.
he'd sound exactly like him.
He does.
He clearly learned a lot from Nick Saban on and off the field.
This is the greatest thing in the world. And listen, we were supposed to lead off the show with the Braves, and we may get to the Braves here in a little while. We may not. But, you know, Paul Finebaum, he's been very, very successful. I'm not taking anything away from Paul Finebaum. He is literally the SEC logo, right? He's the Jerry West of the SEC when it comes to the logo. However, Lane Kiffin's right. He put him on blast. He put him on notice. I don't know what you're good at, says Lane Kiffin. I think it's fascinating that he has the you-know-what, Diesel, to walk up on stage on national television at SEC Media Day and go right at the one and only Paul Finebaum. I love it. I'm a fan of it.
The question is, Cole, like, are we in the entertainment business, or are we in the getting things right and never having anything we've ever said turn out to be wrong business? Because my understanding is this is the entertainment business. What we're doing, what Paul Finebaum does. He's not out there breaking any news. Somebody else goes and research. Do you think Paul Finebaum is the one actually digging in and doing the research and finding out these little tidbits and putting them out? No, he reports the news. Okay. He is a reporter. He is an entertainer. He is not a journalist.
Well, you know, he's always been very good at using fewer words to allow his audience to have a voice and to get his audience stirred up. You know, the famous phone calls that his show's known for. And look,
Paul,
not taking anything away from Paul, but let's be honest. Paul Finebaum, a lot of his show over the years, Diesel, the reason we talk about it's because of the callers, not him. So I would even argue based on what you said about being an entertainer, in my opinion, Paul's not that good of an entertainer. I think what he is good at, he allows his audience to kind of have the floor and allows crazies from all over the country to call in. But what would that show be without the phone calls? Really?
Yeah.
What would it be?
It would just be a guy with big goofy ears making hot takes. I mean, here's something that I plan to bring up later in the show. This is not brand new. This is actually from, I think probably Monday is when this was said over the air. But Paul Finebaum had this to say about Lincoln Riley's tenure in Southern Cal.
I think he has an enormous amount to prove because, quite frankly, Jay, I think he's been a disaster.
Now, there's a lot more to that clip that we're going to play later on in the show.
A strong word.
But he called Lincoln Riley at Southern Cal a disaster. The dude's only been there 2 seasons.
Yeah, I know. And listen, has he been perfect in 2 seasons? No, but like I said, that D word, disaster, that's a strong word. Yeah. Listen, I have no just absolute hate built up for Paul Finebaum. I think Paul Finebaum has really done a good job of giving the SEC a consistent platform and being a consistent voice of the SEC. And to your point, his job, listen, they don't pay them. They don't even pay the little guys like us. They don't pay us to be right. You know, if they paid us to be right, we wouldn't earn a paycheck. Our job's not to break news and break stories and be right 24/7. Now, that is part of the job, but to your point, as you said, I agree with you. Our job's to entertain. However, Lane Kiffin, what did he do? What did Deion say? He kept those receipts and he blasted back. He called Lane Kiffin the Miley Cyrus of college football. And what's with the Miley Cyrus hate? Where'd that come from? I like Miley. I'm a Miley fan.
Is he saying that Lane Kiffin has a flat butt if you put him in like plastic shorts? The way Miley Cyrus looked. You remember that live? She was on stage with God. I'm trying to remember his name now. Doing a performance, and she was wearing these skin tone plastic looking shorts, and her butt cheeks were like sticking out the bottom, and people said it looked like a turkey that had been splayed open and ready to go for Thanksgiving.
Well, Lane, and listen, if I'm Lane Kiffin and I get compared to Miley Cyrus, I take it as a compliment. I mean, she's had a halfway decent career, right? I mean, love her or hate her,
she's been memed just as much as she's been lauded and applauded.
Sure,
but she's got a hell of a voice. Her cover of Metallica's "Nothing Else Matters," fantastic.
No,
really fantastic.
Her voice is great. Yeah. I'm a Miley fan. I will. I have no shame in admitting that. I'll tell you this though, I think things like that Paul say do get kept by certain coaches, right? I don't think the majority. You know what do we always hear from coaches, Diesel? Well, we tune that stuff out. We don't listen. That's not true. That's a lie. They listen. Listen, I'll even say this. At the high school level, Diesel, I'm talking high school football here, you know, not the end of the world, not NFL, not college football. Every year, it doesn't matter if I pick, I do weekly picks. I'll pick so-and-so to lose. I'll get a text message from somebody at that school. I can't believe you picked us to lose. The coach already knows about it. He's already told. I mean, it's like they listen. They want the coaches listen. The coaches tell you they don't, but they do listen. I don't care if it's NFL. Listen, there are NFL GMs that listen. They listen. They're not oblivious. You watch Hard Knocks with the Giants. Go watch the Hard Knocks that just came out with Saquon and him going to Philly. They listen. Lane Kiffin, those guys, they listen. And Lane Kiffin keeping receipts. One more time, if you just tuned in, Lane Kiffin throwing hammers today at Paul Finebaum. I don't know what you're good at. Here is the audio of Lane.
College game day, you had to make your big splash. And they were watching it because I know the other person in the room that was watching it with them. And you said, what a joke I was. I'm the Miley Cyrus of college football coaching, and I should be fired. And they looked at each other, and later that night I was fired.
Yeah. By the way.
But hey, look what happened. I would have never gotten to work for Coach Saban. All these other things wouldn't happen. So I appreciate you for helping getting me fired. Thank you.
Look at what you're doing today. You're predicted to go to the play. And look at Miley Cyrus. She's had a nice comeback.
So you were wrong on that. I mean, you put me down with that. So really, I don't really know what you're good at. Like you
Man, I'll bet you Paul Finebaum does one hell of a moonwalk with all that backtracking he was doing in that segment.
He's doing this.
What do you mean? I bet his ears were blood red after Lane Kiffin came after him.
A lot of Miley.
I mean, look, Paul knows that his job is to be an entertainer. These coaches around football, this is their life, right? They're hired and fired. And sometimes what media members say can affect what hiring agents may think. It may affect their decisions. So these guys do take this personally. They too take this seriously. How dare you not pick me? How dare you say that I stink? But they don't look at it in the same way of all any and all publicity is good publicity, because you're talking bad about me on a public platform.
And you know what's fascinating about Finebaum, and then I'll move on, because the Braves are just dying waiting on us to talk about him. But what I think is so fascinating, Diesel, about Finebaum is it seems as if years ago the crowd that grew up watching Finebaum helped Finebaum get to where he is now. I think a lot of the crowd that watch Paul now see through a lot of that stuff. Like, people now want to be entertained, to your point. They want to have a draw. They do keep receipts. They do want to know if you're right. They want to know if you're credible or not. And I think they're starting to kind of, I'm not saying Paul's transitioning out. I think they're just starting to see through some of that.
Well, Paul Finebaum makes $5 million a year from ESPN. So clearly somebody at ESPN loves what he's doing, right? So it doesn't matter to them that he's wrong sometimes. It just matters that he says entertaining things that get people to tune in and watch his show. They get people to like and retweet and comment on his videos. They don't care if it's positive. They don't care if it's negative. I mean, look at all media in this country. All of it is designed for people to argue with each other and yell at each other and say outlandish things.
Surely not.
I mean, that's one reason why. I mean, personally, it's not my cup of tea, right? I don't listen to I didn't listen to Skip Bayless or watch his show because I didn't like him and Shannon screaming at each other.
Yeah.
I don't listen to Stephen A. Smith because I don't like him screaming at people and them screaming and Max Kellerman screaming right back at him. I mean, this hyper divisive type of content where it's just this ping pong match back and forth, it raises the temperature, and the average audience member, the average fan, loves that kind of stuff. It's not personally for me, but they love that kind of stuff. So that's all they need him to do is to say outrageous things that are going to get people to talk about it on social.
Yeah, it's just the entertaining facet of it that they want to be able to use to keep people tuned in. And that's why Stephen A. Smith does have the highest ratings year in and year out at ESPN. That's why. So really funny, though. I love Lane Kiffin. I love him even more today. Paul Finebaum starting to he's kind of starting to age on me a little bit.
Isn't it amazing how Lane Kiffin was a really hated coach? You know, when he left Tennessee, when he left Southern Cal, he was a kind of a pariah in this industry almost, and he did what a lot of coaches do. You go work on Nick Saban's staff for a little while, you stay out of the spotlight for a little while, then you show your quality on Nick Saban's staff, and all of a sudden, bam, everybody loves you. I love Lane Kiffin. If he was my coach, if I was an Ole Miss fan, I would be beating the drum for Lane Kiffin every single day.
You know what I love most about it? I love most that, to your point, he was hated. However, when he went to Alabama, there were so many Alabama fans who won't admit it today that were so upset that Lane was coming to coach with them. They were like, "Oh, we don't want Lane Kiffin, right? No way Lane Kiffin's coming to Bama." Then what did Lane Kiffin do when he got to Bama, Diesel? He put up one of the best offenses, and then when he left, their offensive production dropped off a ton.
Turns out the guy was actually pretty smart and pretty good at his job.
Really
maybe not a great head coach when he was young. He just needed to spend some time under a great head coach to learn how to be a great head coach.
A few comments, then we'll get to the Braves because the Braves are waiting on us. Brian Snicker texted into the show and said, "Are you ever going to get to us?" Trey says Miley transitioned well with her singing into adulthood by smoking a lot.
You know that?
Is that true?
I'm going to try to see if I can find that Miley Cyrus clip. The one where her voice is super smoky and super scratchy.
Madcraft says he should post the lyrics of "Shake It Off" by Swift. I can't read that far away. What's he saying? He doesn't know who Miley is. I'm sorry, Madcraft. The computer's far away and I can't read it today. Insinuating. Oh, let me make it. Here we go. Insinuating he doesn't know who Miley is would be epic. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, if Lane acted like he didn't know. Yeah, and by the way, Madcraft, I wear contacts. My eyes are supposed to be good, but
the journey
you can
is
ask.
usually the part that you remember anyways.
Is that her? That's not her.
Well, that was a zipper. This part's her.
The journey is usually the part that you
No
remember
way.
anyways.
Are you kidding me? She does. So she is a smokeaholic.
Yeah, here we go.
The journey is usually the part that you remember anyways.
Oh my God. I didn't. Sounds like that commercial where the lady's holding the thing. I told you not to start smoking when you were 15
Hey,
years
she's
old.
got a great career as a Budweiser frog one day if she needs it.
Is that how she sounds now? Good.
This clip got famous in 2023, I
God,
believe.
that's rough.
So yeah, it's about a year ago.
That is
The journey is usually the part that you remember anyways.
that doesn't even close. That's not even close to sounding like her. How did we know that Miley Cyrus and Lane Kiffin would be in the same conversation?
Her
today?
voice sounds like that sound when you weave a little too far to the right on the road and you hit the rumble strip.
So
That is usually the part that you remember.
it does. I like Madcraft's idea of Lane insinuating that he doesn't know who Miley is. That would be pretty good.
Miley
All right.
sounds like Marge Simpson's sister. Jeez.
Diesel.
What? How did this become a bash Miley
That's why
Cyrus?
I don't know. That's why I'm trying to pivot here. Speaking of Lane Kiffin and Miley Cyrus, those two being in the lead segment of the show with the Atlanta Braves. I don't know that that's ever happened before. I don't know if anybody had that on their bingo card for today, but that's where we are. So now that the All-Star game is over, just a few more minutes left in this segment. I asked the question to you, Diesel, as well as our Tolos who are listening, watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, who are Atlanta Braves fans. What a now that you are who you are, would a trade deadline move be enough to put the Braves over enough of a hump to go make a run? The reason I ask that is there are some sources out there that are predicting the Braves to land an all-star in a blockbuster trade with one of their division rivals. Well, who would that be? That would be Jazz Chisholm. Jazz Chisholm Jr. is expected to get traded at the deadline. He plays for the Miami Marlins. Alex Anthopoulos is known for making trades, Diesel, and I have two reports of people saying, you know what? We really feel like he's going to get traded, and the Braves would be a good landing spot. However, the question is that Jazz Chisholm one guy? Is he enough to help get these bats in this Atlanta Braves lineup hot and allow this team to go on a postseason run 8.5 games back right now?
Well, there's a lot of talk, and I'm going to see if I can find this audio clip. I didn't realize that we needed it, but now that I know we're talking about this is a fantastic clip to have. It was conversation around the All-Star game saying that a lot of these players are recruiting players to come to their team ahead of the trade deadline. I mean, these guys talk amongst themselves. Here it is. Here's AJ Przinsky saying that players recruit each other at the All-Star game all the time.
Prime player recruitment grounds, not this particular case, but just in general. Like, do you think sometimes dudes make friends here and then he's like, hey, we should play together?
I do that all the time. Many a person where I'm like, hey, we should play together. I think we'd be fun, or we'd have fun. And you meet guys wherever, out at dinner, or meet somebody through another player, and you're like, yeah, I'd like to play with you one day. Very.
Oh, Cole, I want to play with you too.
It does happen. Ronald Acuna Jr. is the king of doing that.
Yeah.
If you go listen to him mic'd up, he's always recruiting players to Atlanta. Here's Talking Baseball on X about the potential of Jazz Chisholm becoming an Atlanta Brave.
I do want to send an outfielder to the Braves, and I do think Jazz Chisholm is going to get traded. So I am going to send Jazz Chisholm to the Braves.
That's exactly where I had him going.
That's where he wants
loves
to play.
Ronald. He looks at Ronald the way I look at Ken Griffey Jr.
Someone's going there. Jazz is getting traded. They're going to make a move for an outfielder. They already brought back Eddie Rosario. Jazz Chisholm to the Braves.
So there's a lot of predictions. The Yankees also are a player interested in Chisholm. Diesel, real quick, the Marlins moved to Chisholm to center field. They moved him to center field before the 2023 season. And 97 games for Miami. Chisholm batted .250, .304, .457 with a career-high 19 home runs, 51 RBIs, 22 stolen bases. Following the season on October 10th, Chisholm underwent surgery to repair turf toe in his right foot. It would be an interesting trade. It would help the Braves. I just don't know, and we can get to it later in the show.
Yeah.
I just don't know if it'd be enough to get them over the Philadelphia Phillies, who are, in my opinion, the best team in baseball.
Well, they have Jared Kelenic sitting in center field right now.
Yeah.
And let me see if I can pull up Jared Kelnic's numbers.
And that's the thing, though.
And see if it would really be worth it. He's okay. Sorry, don't have that information at the moment.
And we can get back to it because we can go deeper into it. But I just feel like Atlanta does want an upgrade. I don't think Kelnic's the best guy to roll into the postseason with.
So he's sitting right now at 255, 10 home runs, 29 RBIs for the season, 721 OPS. He's hitting well. Honestly, he's hitting fairly well, but they need a spark. The Braves really need that spark.
They do
to get things going. And I mean, are they willing to send a Jared Kelenic back down to make that run?
I think I would. I think I'd go do something, not necessarily Diesel to try to make a run this year, but just to give you another impactful player for the future, like a Chisholm, that can help in these kind of situations, because the Braves outfield right now is not the best when obviously injuries hurt, with Michael Harris being injured as well. They've got to have somebody. They're 8.5 games back. They're still in the playoff hunt, right? Potential wild card. If they get Jazz Chisholm, maybe he can provide enough of a spark for them to lock in that wild card spot, and then who knows in the postseason,
yeah,
right?
And can they afford him? Can they put him on one of those famous Braves contracts, those long-term, low dollar per year, but a long-term contract? Is he willing to do that, or does he want to sign on for a year or two and put himself back out there in the market?
Good question.
That's a really good question. When we come back, Cole, you called Paul Finebaum the SEC logo, and I want to know who actually is the voice of college football. I think there's a handful of interesting candidates, but there may be a new king just walking in and taking over. That's next on the Fan Upstate. You called Paul Finebaum the SEC logo in the last segment, Cole. I think he kind of resembles the SEC logo.
Yeah, can I take that back?
I mean, his head and his ears are kind of round, a lot of bright colors going on. I'm not so sure that I would call him the SEC logo, but I wonder who is the voice of college football. I mean, we've had a lot over the years who have tried. We got some big names. Deion, yeah. Honestly, I don't hate that idea. If 10 years from now, 15 years from now, Deion retires as coach and says, you know what, I want to affect the sport from a high level. I wouldn't necessarily hate that because, man, does he not have a grip on marketing, right, in college football? So the question is, who is the voice of college football? Could it be, a lot of the game day crew? Could it be Chris Fowler? No, not really. I think he's a smart guy, but he's more of a facilitator, right? He's more of a game manager on college game day. Reese Davis, big name in college football. Is he the voice of college football?
For some reason, I always get Chris and Reese confused.
It's easy to do.
I'm always getting them mixed up.
Two generic white dudes in a suit.
They are, and they look the same,
Yeah. I mean, who is it? Isn't Chris Fowler part of the college football 2025 announcer crew? I know Kirk Herbstreit is. Kirk Herbstreit is everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. I mean, he obviously played at Ohio State. He's been on game day for years. He's been all over ESPN. Like every day when he talks college football, he must have just this ridiculous mobile setup where wherever he is, he can stop, put up a backdrop, hang a light, boom, Kirk Herbstreit is on TV. But the question, Cole, is after 6 months of retirement and one appearance at SEC Media Day, has Nick Saban walked in like a new sheriff, jingled and jangled his spurs, and become the preeminent voice in college football?
I think he 100% has. 100%.
I think he is by far the biggest voice in the SEC. And maybe we're just prisoners of living in the South.
Yeah.
And we really perk up and listen when it comes to Nick Saban. But do you really think Big Ten people really care what Nick Saban has to say? Do you really think they look to him as sort of the litmus test and as the rudder to keep college football on track? I'm not so sure.
I don't know that the Big Ten does, or maybe even like the Pac-12 whatever you want to call what happened. I think that Nick Saban's Diesel, number one, his longevity in the sport, his credibility, and his knowledge, I think he did walk in. I'll say this, though. I would not have said 6 months ago that I thought he would walk in and take it over Herbstreit, Fowler, and Davis, but I would rather hear what Saban has to say than those three right now.
Here's what I think has to happen. I think Nick Saban is just like a frog's hair away from becoming the voice of college football. And remember, I had a quote yesterday. Somebody asked him if there was a commissioner of college football, would he be interested? He said, well, you better go ask Miss Terry. So maybe Miss Terry is the preeminent voice in college football. If Nick listens to her, she is the emperor behind the curtain running things, right? But here's how Nick Saban could, without a doubt, just step right in and take over that role. All he has to do is show up to Big Ten Media Day. All he has to do is show up to ACC Media. He doesn't really have to show up to ACC Media Day. He just shows up to Big Ten Media Day here in a couple of weeks. The entire college football world stops, and they say, oh, damn, Nick Saban is taking over this whole thing. Because he's clearly got a hold of the SEC right now. He clearly has that. And it's funny. I have a clip here from Kirby Smart, head coach at Georgia, who was talking about Nick Saban's prep for being at SEC Media Day. And he compared having to share details about his team with, sharing details with the devil.
It's weird. I mean, the call I did to set up for those media days was like, I was like nervous. I was like, for 15 minutes, I'm going to share with him about my team. I'm like, I feel like I'm giving answers to Darth Vader or something.
That's true, though. And you know what? I wouldn't put it past Nick Saban to be that guy. I do think, like, as much as people Diesel respect Kirk Herbstreit for being around as long as he has on College Game Day, I think there's a lot of people my age who look at Kirk as the voice of college football because he's who you hear on EA 25. He's who you hear on EA 14 and EA.
I've been hearing him all the way
10.
up like EA 2007.
That's what
I think.
I'm saying. He's been around
Everywhere.
forever, and he's been, the only guy that hasn't lost his job at ESPN in 30 years. And for whatever people have to say about him, he does a halfway decent job. He covers the sport. He does know the sport well.
Yeah.
So I think it's really close though in terms of who is that guy now. But I think Saban's as close with Kirk Herbstreit, in my opinion, as he's ever been.
So the idea, Cole, of ever having a czar of college football, somebody who is a commissioner who could step in and make massive changes like that kind of scares me, right? It's that old Spider-Man saying, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
Could Nick Saban be impartial to the SEC? Could he be impartial with other leagues? Could Kirk Herbstreit be impartial to other leagues? So if there was ever a triumvirate, like a 3-man team that ran college football, I think it would have to be Nick Saban, Kirk Herbstreit, because I think he is basically the voice of the Big Ten. And then who would the third person be? Dion?
You put Nick at 1?
I'd put Nick at 1. I mean, they would all be on the same level, essentially.
Yeah.
They would all be, it would be a 3-man crew. Nick, Kirk, and
I think Dion.
Dion.
Yeah, I think so. And I would even argue maybe moving Dion up. Yeah, and I know those aren't really rankings in terms of what they do, but yeah, I think Deion Sanders, the way that he has impacted the game, I think you do have to have him in some sort of capacity, because the reality of it is he gets a side of the game that Saban didn't. For as good as Saban was, Deion understands the entirety of the Newsome, the new product of college football.
What I'm fascinated to see is Nick Saban is now going to be an on-set analyst for College Game Day this year, which, I mean, that is my alarm clock every single Saturday, right?
Yeah.
Like I wake up at 8:30 on Saturdays. Well, I used to before I had a dog. Now I'm up at 6:30. Thanks a lot. But I would set that alarm for 8:30. That give me just enough time to go downstairs, get a cup of coffee in me, maybe another half of one, and then bam, game day starts. Saturday starts. Saturday is here. But I think we're going to be treated to something really special as Nick Saban joins College Game Day this year, which would be kind of, akin to Roosevelt's fireside chats, the biggest voice, or, somebody who's among the biggest voices. Nick Saban and Kirk Herbstreit are both going to be on College Game Day this year. I just want to know, is Nick going to be willing to kind of go St. Nick on Kirk Herbstreit? Is he going to be willing to go nuclear, or is he going to smile? Is everything going to be great and groovy?
How many chairs are they going to have?
I know. Is McAfee off of it this year?
No, he's back.
I used to really like McAfee for the first couple of times
I
that
wish
he
they
was
would-
on game day.
I don't want McAfee on the whole entire
We need
time.
McAfee down on that little fake field. How about that?
Put McAfee over there where Bear used to be in that corner.
I miss Bear.
Bear.
God, I miss Bear Felica. He was great.
When did he's not there? I mean, did Bear just, what
I
happened
think
to
he
Bear?
left. I think
Nobody
he left
knows
the
what happened to
show.
Bear. So you have now Saban, Pat,
Herbstreit.
Kirk. Yeah, that's 3. Joey.
Yep.
It's 4. Who am I missing? Chris
Desmond.
Fowler?
Is Desmond still on it?
Desmond? I said Joey. I might have meant Desmond. Joey Galloway.
You're thinking Joey Galloway. He does the in studio.
Okay, so
like halftime
Desmond
show
Howard.
stuff. Yeah, Desmond Howard.
Yeah, so there's at least going to be 6, right? It's going to be a packed
How
set.
how are they gonna do that?
And then Lee Corso.
Oh God, is Corso back?
You gotta put
I
the
hope he is, man.
At least for one segment to put the.
Well, remember, I really enjoyed a couple of years ago when he was out. Now it might have been immediately following his stroke when they would have him do the show live from his home, and I enjoyed that. Just kind of I mean, they sold it to Home Depot and they had his entire house or set or whatever just decked out. But I liked Corso when he's only on it now in a limited fashion, because
I did too. He's out.
I love Lee Corso, but it's hard to watch him go downhill and it's hard to watch him struggle through his cognition on the show. I think he is still probably a very smart analyst with college football. It's just tough to be able to spit that information out quickly and on cue every single time.
So as of right now, the latest article reads, we will see Pat McAfee on the set of ESPN's College Game Day during 24. However, it's an open question right now. ESPN still does not have McAfee under contract to appear on the network's flagship weekly program. McAfee 37 has a different contract with ESPN to air the Pat McAfee Show weekdays, obviously. By bringing McAfee on, ESPN hoped to provide a new injection of energy into its most important college football show. So it sounds as if he's expected to, but there's no contract.
Have you ever been to a College Game Day live show?
It's a mistake, though.
It's not as fun as you think it is
you
because
have to get there at 5.
Well, you do that, but number 2, you can't hear what's going on the show.
Very,
you
very
really
vaguely,
can't. So if any of you if it comes to Clemson this year, if it goes to your school, go, because it's really fascinating. But really just go once. Because
once is all you need.
Once is all you need, because when I was there for a filming of Game Day, all you basically saw was the camera on a zip line over your head. And anytime it came by, you cheered, waved, and then you're standing there and you see the guys on set. They're like 40 yards away from you. And they've got speakers over there, but it's just like,
yeah. It's been a while since
peanuts.
I went.
You can't understand what they're saying.
The last one I went to, it's been so long. It was Jameis Winston at Clemson night game. And I was there at 5 a.m. But Bland on X chimes in and says, I don't think McAfee has re-signed his contract. Bland, I think you're right. I just read that a minute ago, so I just found – I don't know. I still think it'll get done. I think they'll bring him back somehow. And even if it's in a limited capacity – I think he's too important of a figure now for that network to not have him on.
He is one hell of a spark plug. I'll give him that. I don't love a lot of his analysis. I don't love that he's kind of doing the Finebaum thing where I'm just going to come on here and say outlandish things that don't make a whole lot of sense. But
I'd like it to be limited.
A lot of people love him.
You know what I like about – I'll tell you what I like about First Take now. And I did not like First Take when it was Stephen A. and Max. I didn't like it. I was not a fan. However, what I do like about First Take now is that they rotate guys in with Stephen A. I would like Game Day to do the same, but have your core, right? Have Desmond, Kirk, whoever
Reese.
else is the core. Yeah, have the core. Rotate in Grandpa to put the
Chris Fowler. It's not Reese Davis.
Chris Fowler. Yeah, have Grandpa come in for one segment to put his elephant head on and, get everybody cheering and riled up. Have McAfee for 2 or 3 segments. Bring in some other guys because they always have a guest picker.
And they have the female that's down on the field whose name I can't remember.
Yes.
She's like a Peloton instructor, I think.
Yeah, the pretty one.
Yeah.
That pretty much sums it up.
You're not talking about Kirk?
No, not this time. But I don't have a problem with him being on there. I don't like him on there the whole time.
Jess Sims is her name. Yeah, she's all over the on-field stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting though. I think Saban, if he wants to be that voice of college football, I think it's his. I think I think he has to do is stick around for a few years. Like if he's in 2 and he's done, then I don't think he is. But if he sticks around for 4 to 6 years, I'm going to look. How old is he now?
Who would you Tolos put as the third leg?
He's 72.
72. Still got a ton of energy. He's got more energy at 72 than I have at 40.
I know.
Who would you put as the third member of that triarchy that runs college football? Herb Street, Saban, and who?
Yeah, I'd go Saban 1. I'd probably go Herb Street at 3.
Herbie.
And I'd go Dion at 2. I'd go Dion at 2. All right, we did it last week, Diesel. 1 a week. It's time to do our weekly NFL division prediction and Vegas odds for 2024. We went to the AFC last week. You and I both liked the Dolphins to win the division last week. However, this week we go to the AFC North. So go ahead and get your text predictions in for the teams in the AFC North in 2024. 71307 is the way you can text the show. Start your text with the word fan. Looking at the NFC North, if you have a team in the NFC North, if your team is the Detroit, I said NFC North. Let me back up. I misspoke. I apologize. We are not doing the NFC North today. We're doing the AFC North. I didn't look at the rundown good enough. If your team is in the AFC North, the Ravens, the Browns, the Steelers, or the Bengals, we want you to get in on the conversation. Again, Ravens, Browns, Steelers, Bengals make up the AFC North. Diesel, last year, the Baltimore Ravens were the AFC North winner, 13-4. Cleveland did go 11-6. Pittsburgh always wins like 10 games a year, 10-7. And then Cincinnati, we know Joe Burrow less. They went 9-8. However, with Joe Burrow back, Steelers having Russell Wilson, Deshaun back, and Lamar, this to me is one of the most interesting, fascinating divisions all of a sudden in football.
It is by far the most star-studded at quarterback. I mean, God, some huge names. And how great is it to have Deshaun and Lamar in a conference together, in a division together, facing off against each other twice in this season, assuming Deshaun stays healthy and Deshaun wants to be on the field. I mean, that's been one of my biggest disappointments, obviously outside of all of the negativity that went on with Deshaun Watson and the massage therapist. Now that he's back on the field, he's off the field a lot. And he doesn't really appear to want to be out there. I mean, we all remember Deshaun Watson as a relatively quiet but a joyful type of football player. His demeanor on the field was always smiling and having a good time. Well, that has changed in such a drastic way since getting that massive guaranteed contract in Cleveland, and then essentially just sitting out a lot. It's been really disappointing to watch.
So here are the 2024 odds, according to Las Vegas Diesel, on the AFC North. As you would imagine, as you can assume, the Baltimore Ravens, with the addition now of Derrick Henry, are the favorites to win the division, plus 110. However, not far behind them are the Cincinnati Bengals, plus 180. Obviously, Joe Burrow being healthy impacts that a lot, right? Cleveland, plus 600. And then Las Vegas is basically saying we have no faith that Russell Wilson still can lead a franchise. Diesel, the Pittsburgh Steelers, plus 1,100 to win the AFC North. I think this one's fun because of Deshaun. However, I do agree with Vegas that I'm not the biggest Russell Wilson fan. I think the Steelers do finish fourth. However, the top three, I think that's as tight of a top three in the NFL than any other division. With Joe Burrow being back healthy, I think he's got as good as a shot as anyone to win Comeback Player of the Year, maybe even League MVP. If Deshaun stays healthy, maybe they finish second. You would think that Lamar and Derrick Henry would just run shop on everybody in that nasty defense. However, I think it's really hard if you have to pick. I think it's hard to pick between where those three land at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think Vegas is pretty dead on here. Pittsburgh, yes, they've got big names. They've got Justin Fields and they've got Russell Wilson at quarterback, but both of those are question marks. I mean, can Russell Wilson do it again? Can Justin Fields be that guy that we thought he was going to be? It's weird that they're both on the same roster. I mean, it's just such a strange situation in Pittsburgh, and maybe Pittsburgh feels like they've got two decent options right now at quarterback, whereas a lot of teams have one really good option. But it's easy to see why Pittsburgh is fourth on this list. They had the one of the weaker schedule or one of the weaker seasons last year out of that division, outside of Cincinnati, of course, who didn't have their star quarterback. I think the battle really is coming down between Cincinnati and Cleveland here. And there's just been so many injuries and so much time missed at the quarterback position in this division last year that's where the crapshoot is. And again, what does that say about Pittsburgh and their quarterback room when both of us are saying a huge question mark and a recovering quarterback is better than what you got when you've got a legend taking snaps?
So when I look at the Vegas odds, I'm trying to allow myself to come up with my own list here of who finishes 1 through 4. But like you said just a moment ago, it's hard to dispute this. It's hard to go against what Vegas has. It's hard. As good as the Bengals would be with Jamar and Joe, it's hard for me to think that Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, two of the best at their position, with a great coach, great offensive line, they're stacked. They fell short so many years. Do they digress? If they do, you've got to tell me how. So because of that, I hate to be old boring Cole here, but I'm going to agree with you, and I'm going to agree with Vegas. I think the Vegas lines are exactly right. I think the Ravens finish first, and the Bengals, those two teams, when they play each other, that's obviously going to decide it. But I think the Browns and the Steelers finish 3 and 4 there.
Yeah, and of course with T. Higgins still being around, even though he requested that trade, even though he may not be the happiest guy on that roster, the Bengals still have him at the moment. And they if they throw the right amount of money at him, they could make him a happy player. And then, man, that makes it really interesting, the conversation between now Baltimore and Cincinnati. But we really just have to see how that rehab Joe Burrow can stick it out. Can he stay healthy over the course of a season?
And real quick before the break, what if the Browns fell apart and there was consistency at the quarterback position in Pittsburgh? Pittsburgh ends up finishing 3 instead of 4. If something happens to Deshaun, obviously that's very likely. But maybe we're discounting the 3 and 4 there, that maybe Pittsburgh could be better with Russell
What
Wilson.
if Cleveland falls apart? Sounds like a movie that I've seen about 100 times, right?
Yeah, that's true. It could happen once or twice before.
When we come back, Cole, we go back to that well of Paul Finebaum and the crazy things he had to say at SEC Media Day and examine his thoughts on Lincoln Riley at USC, and Lane Kiffin not the only one pushing back on Paul Finebaum this week. That's coming up next. Lincoln Riley at Southern Cal. Good coach, bad coach.
Oh,
Paul Finebaum, you ask him, he's been a disaster.
God. What a strong word.
Paul is just, we talked about it in the first segment of the show today, Cole. Paul Finebaum is just saying a lot of BS, see what sticks to the wall. Like, do we genuinely believe Paul believes any of these things, or is he just taking the over-the-top nature of his radio show and bringing it to TV, bringing it to SEC Media Days? Here is what Paul Finebaum had to say about Lincoln Riley, now head coach at USC, former head coach at Oklahoma.
I think he has an enormous amount to prove because, quite frankly, Jay, I think he's been a disaster. Let's go back 3 years. Oklahoma and Texas joining the SEC. It was announced at this moment in time. What did Lincoln Riley do? He ran away. He did not want to deal with the Southeastern Conference at OU. He took what he thought was an easier course, so he goes out to Southern Cal. He takes Caleb Williams. Good first year, but since then, everything has gone wrong. I thought last year was one of the worst coaching jobs I have ever seen. Quite frankly, had I been the athletic director at Southern Cal, I would have fired Lincoln Riley because he's yet to show, after many years as a head coach, he knows anything about defense. He's gone through defensive coordinators. He just simply couldn't handle it. And now things are going to be 5 times worse in the Big Ten. On top of that, a number of his top players are bailing out. This is a guy who owned L.A. for about a half a minute. And quite frankly, next year at this time, I think he'll more than likely be an assistant in the NFL if he's that lucky.
You didn't want to compare him to a pop star while you're at it, Paul?
No, Miley.
Look, he's got him on the defensive coordinator bit. There's no defense at Southern Cal. And if there was, well, hell, they'd be a pretty good football team.
So he's 19-8.
Yeah, 19-8 at Southern Cal. He was 55-10 at Oklahoma. 4 out of his 5 seasons at Oklahoma were 10 wins or better. The only season that wasn't was the COVID-shortened 2020 season. There's no doubt, and they won 9 games that year. So there's no reason to believe that Oklahoma wouldn't have gotten to 10 wins again had he been there had the 2020 season not been shortened. But Paul Finebaum's starting to talk like his listeners. He's starting to talk like the idiots who call in to his show, right? He's starting to say the outrageous thing out loud, which normally radio hosts don't say. They let their listeners say the crazy thing. That way they can essentially plead innocence and say, well, I'm not the one who said that. The listener said that. I just reacted to what the listener had to say.
So it is very fascinating because I would blame, while I don't disagree with Paul here, I would blame Paul and a lot of other media members because, listen, you guys are the one that crowned him. Like when he left Oklahoma with Stoops, he went to USC, and all of a sudden, you guys are you guys are the ones that made this such a big deal about how he's going to go bring football back to USC. And all we heard was Lincoln, USC this, USC that. So do I disagree with everything Paul said? No, not really. I just don't know that you can say 19-8. Is that a disaster?
High-level coaches don't tuck tail and run. Let's first of all just eliminate that. Paul Finebaum is displaying why a lot of people look at SEC fans like they're a cult, because they get this superiority complex built into their brains that we're the best and everybody's afraid to play us. Nobody's afraid to play your teams. That's the biggest load of horse crap I've ever heard. No one's afraid to play your teams. They may go into it saying, well, they're better than us because their athletes are bigger, stronger, faster. More of them get drafted than come out of our conference, but nobody's afraid to play you. Yeah. Was App State afraid 2 years ago when they went in and won at Kyle Field? No, they weren't afraid. Okay. So let's just eliminate that narrative from our mindset. It's fun for fans to say it because guess what? You don't have to back up your BS, but Paul Finebaum is getting called to the carpet very often. Lane Kiffin called him to the carpet. Mad Dog Russo called him to the carpet. This is what he had to say. He was actually on the show. He was on the air with Paul Finebaum, and Paul Finebaum doing the moonwalk here again.
He didn't take over a good program. They were terrible. USC what was their record before he got there the year before? Did he lose 5 games? 4 games?
But Doggy, in the transfer, I mean, he brought a bunch of players. He brought the best player in the country with him.
I won a Heisman Trophy with him.
Didn't get much out of him.
And he won a Heisman Trophy. And a place where they win Heisman with Marcus Allen and Charles White
What did it?
and Simpson.
How many trophies did he? How many
Carson Palmer.
trophies did he hold up?
Well, hold on now. You talk about Heisman Trophy at USC. That means everything. Carson Palmer, Leonard, Reggie Bush, Simpson. They love Heisman trophies, and he brought a Heisman Trophy there. That counts. That counts.
I mean, you're
Jeez,
using
USC.
reason why USC is good. Come on,
It's USC. They've been around since 1910. New Botany. USC. That's why. It's a much better program than Oklahoma. I'm surprised at you.
Mad Dog's the best thing that ever happened to First Take. Ever.
Oh my God.
I love Mad Dog. So to say this, he's 100% right there.
Okay, so Mad Dog, his take is, well, winning Heisman trophies is just as good as winning national championships and being in the college football playoff if you're a Southern Cal fan.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say it's
he's wrong. Mad Dog is 100% wrong. And you know what he has to do? He has to scream over people and not give them an opportunity to actually reply.
I don't know that he means I don't know that he means a Heisman is as good as a Natty. I just think I think he's right in the sense of you winning a Heisman Trophy, you come to USC as Lincoln Riley. Guess what? Caleb Williams, with the portal and everything going on, Caleb Williams probably isn't at USC without Lincoln Riley. And has Lincoln Riley been great? No. Has he been a disaster? I don't think he has.
Is Caleb Williams in your mind, irrespective of what happened last year? Because you know how often they like to use, well, he was a Heisman contender last year, so clearly he's great this year. Let's pretend for a moment that Caleb Williams is still at Southern Cal, and now he's playing in the Big Ten. Is in a vacuum, 2024, Caleb Williams at Southern Cal playing against Big Ten teams even remotely close to being a Heisman Trophy candidate?
I think he's in the conversation. I think he's at best
5th or 6th.
Because Washington, I think Washington's going to see a drop-off. You know, like, it's a good question because they do have an interesting – I think it's a fascinating schedule they have. Michigan, I give Michigan a win. Now, Michigan has a lot to replace too, but that is a huge, huge game for Lincoln Riley. I still think they'll lose 2 of the 3, though, Diesel, when you look at Lincoln Riley's schedule, right? I mean, LSU, Utah State, and Michigan. That's the first 3. Don't you think they're 1 and 2 after those 3? With Michigan and LSU, or do you think they get Michigan?
Southern Cal, do they get Michigan or LSU? I think they're 0 and 2. After those 2.
I'm saying they have Utah State in the middle. So I'm saying they're 1 and 2 because they beat Utah State. And I agree with you that they lose both.
Losing both of those Big Ten games. I think this is going to be a rude awakening type of year for Southern Cal in the Big Ten. I think Caleb Williams would look bad in the Big Ten playing Big Ten defenses. Not all of them. I'm not talking about the Indianas and the Rutgers of the world. I'm talking about playing the actual teams that matter in the Big Ten. And so I'm not putting a ton of value on a Heisman Trophy achieved in the Pac-12 by a guy who tucked tail and went off to the NFL.
I think I would disagree. I think Caleb Williams would do good. Listen, if you plug him in, to your point, right now with this schedule, if you plug him in 1 more year in college football, obviously coming off the Heisman last year and then having 1 more year under his belt, I think Caleb Williams beats LSU. I really do. I'm not sold on LSU yet. Maybe they show me something on September 1st to prove my mind, but I would push back. I'd say that Caleb Williams beats LSU. He beats Utah State. With Michigan losing Harbaugh and their quarterback, maybe he beats Michigan. I'm not saying he does, but they would have a very good shot. And then all of a sudden, if Caleb Williams were 3-0 and beating Michigan and LSU in the first 3 weeks, he'd have that as good as a resume as anybody in the country.
Well, Southern Cal projected right now preseason 20th in college football and power rankings. So that is without Caleb Williams. So if you were to inject Caleb Williams back into this offense, you certainly see that jump a little bit. A ton, I'm not so sure. I see Caleb Williams leading Southern Cal to or preseason being power ranked somewhere around 13 or 14, which still puts them behind Ohio State, puts them behind Oregon, puts them behind Penn State and Michigan. So again, I'm not sold on Southern Cal, how good they would be in year one. So look, I don't look at Heisman trophies with a whole lot of respect, especially because of what the award has become. It's become the best quarterback on a decent team, or the best quarterback on a team that's inside the top 6 or 7 at the end of the season. You got to win real, actual trophies. No merit badges here, no participation awards, because that's what the Heisman Trophy has become.
Though, I think that with Caleb Williams and this year's schedule, I think they're a playoff team. Without Caleb Williams, they're going to have a lot to prove, because you have LSU, Michigan. I don't think Wisconsin will be too tough of a test. Maybe Minnesota is. Penn State will be tough. They're always formidable, right? Washington, Notre Dame. You don't play Ohio State. Thank God for that. If you're Lincoln Riley, right? No Ohio State on the schedule, which is huge. However, I do think with Caleb Williams, they're in the playoff. I think with Caleb Williams, they're a 1 to 2 loss team. This year, I think they're a 2 to 4 loss team. At best, they're a 2 loss team this year, in my opinion. It's a tougher schedule. There's no doubt. And Washington's a question mark for me, because I don't know what they have without Penix and without DeBoer. And the same thing with Michigan in a way. I still think Michigan's going to be very good, but with a lot of new pieces, what are they going to be? If you told me Caleb Williams was going up against a new Michigan and a new Washington, I'd take Caleb Williams against both of those. I'd also take him against LSU and Notre Dame at the end of the season. I think they're very much in the playoffs with Caleb Williams.
Well, one good thing for Southern Cal this year, and this may be what saves Lincoln Riley's bacon this year, is Miller Moss. He was a 4-star when he came out of high school. This guy's class of 2021. He's been in this sport for a long time. So they've got a guy that necessarily doesn't have a ton of game experience. He's a junior this year. Not a ton of game experience. However, he was a highly touted guy. He's been around for a while.
He better grow up quick.
It's gonna be a tough first year for him. Going into the Big Ten, playing on the road, playing not so much all these games in warm, friendly, tropical confines. Southern Cal is going to be in for a rude awakening this year. We talk a lot about how the new teams are going to fare coming into the SEC. I think it's just because it's a little closer to home and it's a little easier for us to project. But, of these teams that are making their way into the Big Ten, I think Southern Cal is going to be one of those ones that really, really struggles.
203, texter from the 203 says, wait, I thought Caleb Williams got drafted. He did, texter. We're saying how much better would they be? Diesel's point was, his question was, obviously, he won the Heisman last year. How much better would they be this year in the new conference if they still had Caleb Williams? Here's a fun question with Lincoln Riley, because I think Lincoln Riley is fascinating. I don't know that I consider him a disaster yet, though. But, Diesel, do you think Lincoln Riley, and God, we could probably spend 2 segments on this, do you think Lincoln Riley would fare better at USC in the Big Ten or here at Oklahoma still in the SEC?
Ooh, well, the big problem is that he still hasn't been able to put a good defense on the field, right? So and regardless, I mean, there's a bunch of big boys up there on the offensive lines in the Big Ten. There's a bunch of hogs on the offensive line in the SEC. So they're going to have, I think they would have equal struggles no matter where they go.
It's tough.
That's a tough one. I mean, I don't think either one is really leaps and bounds above the other.
I do think Finebaum's right about the defense. Lincoln hasn't made the right hire yet. He has not made the right hire yet. To say he knows nothing about defense, I don't know if you can go that far. to what, because that's what Paul Finebaum said in
Yeah.
the audio you played. I'm just a big believer that it's about the hires you make. Dabo Sweeney won 2 national championships with the best defensive coordinator in the country, right?
How is it that we, just to bring it back home here, we talk about Shane Beamer and his hires and say, well, if he can't get these hires right, he's on the hot seat. But we don't say the same things with Lincoln Riley. I mean, obviously he has the resume at Oklahoma, won a whole bunch of games at Oklahoma. So that certainly buys you the benefit of the doubt. But it's, you know, if you can put elite offenses on the field, and clearly Lincoln Riley can put elite offenses on the field, but he's got to be able to find that. Otherwise, you know, you're just putting a lot of big stats up, but not taking home any trophies. And the trophies ultimately are what matters.
So his defensive coordinator in 2024, to Paul Finebaum's point about the rotation of DCs, his staff this year, obviously he is the head guy. Let's see here. As I'm scrolling down their website, Josh Henson is the offensive coordinator. D'Anton Lynn, maybe I'm saying that wrong, Danton, Danton Lynn is the DC. Lynn had experience in the NFL, most recently served as the DC at UCLA Diesel, where he completely transformed the Bruins defense. They were 87 in 2022. He took them to number 11 in the nation the very next season. Impressive. So that is very impressive.
Yeah.
Prior to arriving in LA, he spent 9 seasons in the NFL. He's a safeties coach for the Ravens. Maybe this is the right guy. But to your point, the quarterback, the defense, Lincoln, the team as a whole, we don't follow them much because we're in the South. They all have to grow up quick. Will they be judged on this year with a new quarterback, new DC, or do you think that maybe they'll give Lincoln a year to kind of get things figured out?
Well, they played a handful of good offenses in the Pac-12 last year. Obviously, Oregon was really good on offense. Washington was really good on offense. I think Arizona had themselves a pretty solid offensive season as well, but they're not playing that grind week in and week out of the Big Ten schedule or of an SEC type of schedule. So, 11th in the country in the Pac-12, great, where there's not a ton of offense outside of a handful of schools on your schedule. And I don't know what USC's or what UCLA's schedule will look like the year that he had him at 11th in the country. So, I mean, they could have had a soft offensive schedule that year of offenses that they faced. So can he achieve anything like that in the new Big Ten? Probably not. I mean, I see that stat falling into maybe the low 20s and rephrase that, the upper 20s or even the 30s.
What's interesting is, for as tough as their schedule is this year, Diesel, Lincoln Riley, he dodged Oregon and Ohio State, which is 2 guaranteed losses, right?
Hey, if you're going to come into a conference and you need to look good in your first year, that's how you do it. You get lucky. The scheduling gods give you some help there.
What's fascinating is, though, they started out 6-0 last year, and then they crumbled. They lost, 5 of their last 6. Notre Dame, Utah, Washington, Oregon, UCLA. So it's a great question. We'll get back to it later in the season, later in the offseason, if you will. But I like Lincoln Riley. I just don't know that he's got the right hires yet. Coming up next, Kurt Wheeler, senior writer covering FSU football. Florida State might be the most talked about team in the country right now, especially in the ACC, for not the best reasons. We'll talk to Kurt Wheeler of Osceola Rivals next. Talking season continues, a time that we love. Getting those lists out, getting ready for August. The coaches don't love it, but we do. And speaking of talking season, a lot of talk lately about Florida State. We've talked about them a lot this week with rumors with them in the Big 12 and in SEC and Big 10, or conferences not wanting them. Let me just say it that way. But it's time now to bring in Kurt Weiler. Kurt is the senior writer. He covers Florida State for Osceola Rivals, rivals.com. Kurt, have you remembered a time that non-football, non-field related Florida State's been in the news as much as they are now?
It's been a minute for sure. It's been more the on-field stuff, but yeah, especially since December, this has really ramped up. And obviously, I mean, but even dating back further than that, it's crazy the amount of court stuff that I never imagined I would have to cover in my job.
Kurt, what did you make as you read the article yesterday, the assertions laid out in Brett McMurphy's article, where he says he and his colleagues spoke to multiple Big Ten and SEC officials, from coaches to administrators to television people, et cetera. And they were saying things like chaotic and disruptive in reference to Florida State, and as a reason why neither of those conferences would be too interested in the Seminoles.
I take a lot of that with a grain of salt. Obviously, some not great quotes in there. You don't want to be called a disruptive partner. It's not a great tag, but I would venture to say there are plenty of other schools and plenty of other athletic directors who, if they were in a similar spot, would go about it the same way. I think it's a factor of the situation that Florida State finds itself in. I mean, I roll my eyes, especially when it comes to the Big Ten, at the notion of what would Florida State add to the Big Ten. I mean, Florida State would add a lot to the Big Ten. Obviously, the SEC, you can more make that case. But I did find it funny for all the quotes in there. It was a lot of, I think twice someone said, but never say never. Like, because it seems like the what they kept attaching to that is we're not interested in Florida State or Clemson if the ACC survives. I'm not convinced the ACC does survive if Florida State and Clemson manage to get a way out. It feels like that's why this has been at a bit of a stalemate, and that neither side's really giving anything right now, because I think the ACC knows it would not be in a great spot if it lost Florida State. So it makes sense in a way. They're not going to come out and say they're interested when Florida State is still very much locked into the ACC. I think we won't really know the truth of the matter until Florida State manages to find a way out of the ACC, and then we'll kind of see where the truth lies. But I do remember seeing similar things about the West Coast teams in the Big Ten, and obviously that ended up happening.
Kurt, it's fascinating that we're talking in the upstate of South Carolina about Florida State as much as we are with the lawsuits, with the ACC, with Clemson. And oh, by the way, Florida State has a former Clemson quarterback. Have you heard anything about the lawsuits and the destinations? I know I agree with what you said just now about they've got to get out of the ACC first, but even to that point, have you heard anything from Florida State officials and where they might see this going?
No, I mean, it feels like it's tough. It feels like destined in some way for a settlement, just because it's hard to fathom this actually going to court and like the lawsuit actually being presided over by a judge. It just kind of feels like both sides have a lot to lose there. But obviously, I think in a lot of ways the ACC has more to lose, because I do think the ACC would have to really pivot if they did agree to a settlement with Florida State and Clemson. I mean, I know at the base level, obviously, I think we got a little less than a month until that August 15th deadline, where as things stand, if Florida State, if nothing is agreed to prior to August 15th next month, they'll be in the ACC in 2025, as will Clemson. Kind of that's the date where if you want to be out the following year, you have to declare it by then. And I can't fathom Florida State being in a place financially to get out with what that would currently look like, with questions about their TV rights. So if they wanted that to happen in the next month, I think a settlement would have to happen. And considering we haven't really heard any progress on that front, I'm not convinced it will at this time.
Kurt Weiler, senior writer who covers Florida State football for Osceola Rivals and rivals.com. Florida State over the past couple of seasons, Kurt, has been such a transfer reliant team. It's feast or famine. A lot of guys coming in, a lot of guys going out. Do you get the sense that Mike Norvell is comfortable with staying in that sort of pattern and being a transfer type of head coach, or do you see him wanting to kind of turn this thing back towards high school recruits and then using the portal to supplement?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think long term he would even like to. I mean, obviously they've scaled back the portal somewhat from where it was. They didn't take. I think they only took one in the post spring window, when the thought was they might take more. And I think some of that was belief in what they have. I mean, they're taking 3 homegrown players, 3 non-transfers who they find out of high school to ACC kickoff. It feels like a bit of a statement about maybe where he wants things to go. It feels like that is still the more traditional path going forward. I do think this year they took as many transfers as they did because, I mean, A, they lose a lot, and B, it feels like this is an important year for Florida State. They're going to take a step back in some capacity. I can't fathom they're going to go 12-0. You can't rule it out, but I can't imagine they're going to go 12-0 again with all they're having to replace. But it feels important to not lose too much of that momentum. If the fall-off is to 9 or 10 wins, it doesn't feel that significant. You don't want the fall-off to be to 7 wins, because then the talk starts about like, oh, well, that just all those factors coming together for kind of an anomaly season. So it feels like I do think going forward, I mean, the high school recruiting has improved the last few years in particular as they've gotten further away from COVID, and they've built more of those bonds. This was a staff when they got here didn't have a ton of bonds in the state of Florida with those high school coaches and high school prospects. But I think this year was important for them to kind of keep that momentum going, at least moderately, to go as heavy on transfers as they did.
Hey, Kurt, what was the overwhelming response from Florida State fans when DJ announced his commitment to Florida State?
Yeah, I think generally people were happy. Obviously, they were recruiting. They hosted both DJ and Cam Ward on visits, and I think they kind of were in that waiting period with both of them. And then when Cam Ward originally put out the video that he was declaring for the draft shortly after, Florida State took DJ, and then Cam Ward ended up changing his mind and going to Miami. I think there were some people who saw the ceiling of Cam Ward being a little higher, and I think that's fair, but I think the floor is also lower for him. I think DJ – is DJ going to lead you to a bunch of success in the playoff? I'm not sure, but I think it was generally excitement. He was definitely a guy who pretty much wore on his sleeve. I mean, Florida State was the only interest he paid, the school he paid a ton of interest to. It felt like that's where he wanted to be, and I think there's something to be said for a guy who wants to be there. And we saw in the spring, I mean, we saw the potential. We saw, I mean, why he was a 5-star recruit, and I'm fascinated to see. And we saw what Mike Norvell and his staff did with multiple years of Jordan Travis and what they made him. I'm fascinated to see what they can do with 1 year of DJ Uyunglele. It's kind of a different proposition.
Joined right now on the show by Kurt Weiler from Osceola Rivals. I don't know how much time, Kurt, you got to spend watching DJU live at Clemson a couple of years ago. I know you've done your homework and gone back and watched a lot of film on him. How would you say that DJ has grown and matured in the last 18 months since he left Clemson?
Yeah, I think he talked pretty candidly about it. I think Oregon State was kind of good for him, very good for him, getting far away in that regard. I think that was a tough situation. I mean, having to fill the shoes of a guy like Trevor Lawrence is not easy, and he had that early success and then had some struggles and maybe didn't always handle it the best. But I think he as they talked about kind of just the maturity of now being a experienced guy now going into year 5 in college football, I think has done wonders for him. I think Oregon State, learning a new offense helped him a lot, and just kind of, and now obviously learning a third offense at Florida State, I think made this transition easier for him. I mean, the arm talent has always been there. I mean, you see him flick his wrist and the ball goes 65, 70 yards. It's pretty ridiculous how effortless it looks for him. But I think some of the more between the ears type stuff of being a quarterback is something that really Florida State has been pushing and challenging him on to try and get the most out of.
Hey, Kurt, I hope this doesn't happen, but let's just think hypothetically here. If the next 8 to 10 years go by and Florida State doesn't get back to the promised land of a national championship, will last year's debacle of Florida State not getting in be the event that caused Florida State or prevented Florida State from getting to their ultimate dream, their ultimate prized possession that would really dictate whether you consider Mike Norvell a staple, one of the GOATs of Florida State football or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of already, regardless of what happens going forward, regardless of what the future holds, I kind of feel like it's already viewed that way. It's just like, I think people are trying hard to not have it be a condemnation on Mike Norvell, and it shouldn't be, I would argue, because, I mean, they did everything in their power, and obviously Greg Sankey's still kind of taking some victory laps that he doesn't really need to take. But, yeah, I'm fascinated to see how this team handles that. There are, I mean, for all the guys they lost, there are a lot of guys from that team who are back this season. I think there were a few guys who kind of made an effort to return when maybe they had other plans because of that very fact and because they kind of felt like they had something to prove. There are some new guys too, some new faces, but for those returning guys, it does feel like, I mean, it's hard to imagine a much better motivator. And for all people would talk about the Orange Bowl, I mean, there was no motivation whatsoever there. I think there's much more motivation now going into this brand new season to kind of show that wasn't a one-off flash in the pan.
Last year at Oregon State, Kurt, DJU, he passed for 2,600 yards, rushed for only 220 yards. But my big issue with seeing DJ and how he's going to fit in with the personnel that Florida State has this year in the receiving room, Hakeem Williams, Ja'Kai Douglas, Malik Benson, a couple of guys who all have some age on them, but who totaled last year fewer than 500 yards combined. Do you see that receiving room being a big liability, or do you expect them to really surprise a lot of people?
It is very much up in the air, if I'm being honest. I mean, there's a world where it maybe is a bit of a liability, and they badly missed Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson, and the unable to get. I mean, I'm not sure that guy was especially in the portal. I guess there were a few, but maybe they will regret not pushing harder for one of those established receivers in the portal. Because even a guy like Malik Benson, who was one of the stars of the spring and is exceptionally talented, I think could have a big role, isn't, like you said, doesn't have the most production at this level at the previous stop. So I think it is a lot of guys in that room who have very high ceilings and who could be great as soon as this season. But like you said, it's a lot of guys who on the whole are unproven. They're replacing a lot of their receiver production. I mean, I looked it up when I was writing the receiver preview for our website, and I knew it was a lot. And I think I even underestimated exactly how much it is that they're having to replace. And so that will certainly be something to monitor, because you're right. I mean, that could make things easier or harder for DJ, and kind of feels like it'll determine where this season goes and how successful they are.
Hey, Kurt, my last question for you. When you look at the schedule that will be here in, 30-something days now, 37 days away, the game with Clemson on October 5th, obviously that's the one that most Florida State fans are going to circle. The one in Ireland will be cool because it's overseas. But when you look at the schedule this year, is there a threat in your mind to this Florida State team going undefeated other than Clemson? I mean, Notre Dame's not bad, but it seems very, very favorable for the Noles.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm not thinking in that terms. Obviously, yeah, Clemson being at home this year, Florida being at home this year is a plus. I mean, that Notre Dame game, I think, is circled as kind of one of the better non-con games of the year, of the season, potentially in November. I think when you look at that trip to Miami, I think a lot of people, there's some unprovenness about Miami. I think Miami opens the season at Florida. That'll be interesting to see exactly what this team is. But I think with Cam Ward, with Damian Martinez, the running back from Oregon State, DJ's former teammate, I think there is a lot of people who are eyeing Miami as maybe a team that makes a jump. It feels like an important year for Mario Cristobal. Those are the ones I would circle, and it is fairly backloaded. You're right. I think the interesting thing about that first month or so, the first 5 games really, when you look at Georgia Tech, when you look at Boston College, when you look at Memphis and Cal and SMU, Florida State should be favored, and I would say probably all 5 of those games. We'll see about SMU, obviously, it being on the road. But the thing is, it feels like very much a situation where, yes, they should be favored, but if they don't have their A game, I think any of those 5 teams could beat them. I think there is no slam dunk. They don't have the early season FCS game or even like a team where they're just a lot better than. So it definitely feels like a a nice test of the consistency of this team, and it ramps up, but it's by no means a cakewalk before they get to that real tough stretch that starts with that Clemson game.
Kurt Weiler, senior writer for Osceola Rivals, joining us here on the Fan Upstate. Kurt, does Chief Osceola Renegade, the Flaming Spear, still give you goosebumps every time you see it?
Not every time, but in those big game atmospheres, I mean, when it's like Doak, to me, Doak week in and week out is Doak Campbell Stadium's not like the most electric atmosphere in college football stadium, but when a big game hits, it is up there. Like, it is at the very top of the ones I've been in for like that big, highly touted game, prime time night at Doak. I mean, that it is electric.
That's a good way to put it.
I don't think Cole and I have really discussed this on the show. I mean, I look at the whole thing with Osceola Renegade and the Spear as the undisputed best entrance in college football. In my opinion, maybe Southern Cal is second with the Trojans stabbing the sword into midfield. In your opinion, what is the second best? If you do think that what Florida State does is the best,
man, there's some good ones. I mean, Enter Sandman is at Virginia Tech is great. Like you said, USC is great. I mean, everybody. I mean, a whiteout at Penn State. Yeah. I haven't experienced it in person, but it hits. I mean, I'm a big fan of the waving the Children's Hospital, the new thing at Iowa in the last few years.
Yeah.
I was proud. I will say I've played a little EA amongst the busy as things are starting to ramp up. The new college football game, and they nailed the Florida State, all of that. I was pretty impressed with the job they did. I know one of their main developers is a Florida State grad, so it makes sense maybe that he might want to put a little extra focus on making sure they nailed that, and they did.
So as somebody who is a longtime reporter for Florida State, have you noticed, are there any issues with anything surrounding Florida State in the game? We had people reach out and tell us that it's like for South Carolina, the towel's the wrong color. We've seen that, with with Stanford, they've used the wrong logo in a place or two, or have they just nailed perfectly everything about Florida State?
I haven't noticed anything like that. There are a few, obviously, I think there are a few players missing. I know Hakeem Williams, the guy we talked about, isn't in the game, and that's just, I think, because he didn't opt in. It was the whole opt-in thing. I imagine it might happen later, but I mean, they had a hard job getting all those stadiums and everything ready. So it may not be perfect all around, but I think they did a very good job with Doak.
Kurt, good stuff on the Florida State entrance. I grew up, my aunt is a big Florida State fan. I grew up going to a lot of Florida State games, except they were in the Chris Winkie era. So when you talk about that inconsistency, yeah, I hear you there. Hey, great stuff, man. We appreciate you hopping on the show, and look, let's do it again soon.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Kurt.
That is Kurt Weiler.
Has NCAA football 25 totally killed going back and watching games for you? Well, it certainly would me if I had the money to go buy a PS5 and the video game. But no, Cole, my preseason ritual has always been going back and watching old games.
I like that. I
want to go back and watch a game or two from the previous season because I want to remind myself, take a little refresher, get to know names. It's a little bit more difficult if you got a new quarterback coming back. Man, like if you want to go back and kind of get a sense of scheme and what you were good at this last year and what you weren't so good at last year, nothing beats going back and watching game film, right? That's really fun to do. That's how I go back. And of course, I always want to go back and watch a few to make me feel good about my team. You know, even if we didn't have the particularly the greatest season last year, I want to go back and watch those games where, the upset wins over the past couple of years. That's how I go back and get ready for a college football season. So I want to ask you, the Tolos, your team, help me out. Help me build a list. Help us build a list of those must-watch games for your teams over the past season or two, and then I'm going to go back and do it, right? I want to go back and immerse myself back into college football because it's easy to just kind of get caught up in the portal rankings and the recruiting rankings and this much production is back and this guy is gone. But, there's nothing like just actually going back and watching ball.
No, there's so many of them that come to mind. Obviously, growing up a Clemson fan, there are several that, man, are instant classics. I think of a few that I like going back and watching games, Diesel, that I was at. It gives you a different perspective, Yeah. Like I love going back and watching the Clemson Notre Dame Hurricane game. That's a good one.
Yep.
I like going back and watching the New Year's Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Was it the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl where Taj Boyd, Newt Hopkins beat LSU 4th and 16 or something like that? I was there.
I remember where I was when that game was going on.
Yeah, it's just so long ago now. My memory is getting terrible, but that game was kind of the game that got Clemson.
That's one that launched him, yeah.
Yeah, that launched him into the success. Those are the first two that come to mind, but God, there's a lot of them.
Do you have like a time limit of how far you like to go back?
Yeah, I don't like going back.
Once it gets back to the point where the video looks a little bit fuzzy, when the footage looks old, that's kind of when I stop going back.
Bobby Bowden's a good
I have a hard
cutoff.
time watching anything that's still an old 4x3.
Yeah.
Right. It's amazing how much footage has changed. You remember watching those games on TV when they were live thinking, wow, this looks incredible. And then you go back and you watch it on a modern television. It sucks. Yeah, it's rough. I mean, we were just basically watching orange blobs running around on a field, garnet blobs running around on a field. How about 2016 going back and watching Louisville, Clemson 3 versus 5,
man.
Deshaun versus Lamar. We talked about that earlier with the AFC North conversation. I mean, it didn't have like one of those all-time GOAT Dabo quotes at the end of the game, but it was still pretty good when he said at the end of the day, you either have the heart or you don't. I mean, that's one of those. I think that was maybe towards the tail end of the really good GOAT Dabo post-game quotes, but that was a good one. That was a good one. What about you, Tolo? 71307. Text in at 71307. Start your text with keyword fan or by messaging in on the stream. Madcraft says number 5, Miami, number 3, Notre Dame, blew them out in prime time. It was glorious.
What year was that, Madcraft?
Yeah.
Oh, there he goes.
Thank
that
you.
was quick.
Yeah, Madcraft. There's a couple of games that I refuse to go back and watch. I mean, I'll go back and watch my team lose. That's not really a problem for me.
It's tough,
but those games where my team was like that close to taking the Power 5 scalp, the Miami game, circa what was that, 2022, I believe. I mean, that's one of those brutal games. De'Aaron King was the quarterback at Miami, and he just willed his team, walked his team down the field at the end of the game when these two teams had been slugging it out for a while. It's just, I mean, it's frustrating as hell to watch because you know how good that guy was, but you realize your team was just that close to picking off one of those wins. And why those wins are so special to me is obviously I know what happened to App State after beating Michigan and the trajectory that put that program on. And I'm thinking, man, if they could have done it a couple of more times, right? If they could have beaten Miami there, if they could have beaten Penn State on the road, if they could have beaten Tennessee on the road, win a couple of more of those games, and who knows? I mean, I don't don't see we're being in the ACC or anything like that, but you never know, like what kind of trajectory that could put you on.
I didn't realize the Chick-fil-A Bowl that I was talking about with Clemson and LSU, when LSU was 7 in the country. It seems crazy that was 2012.
No way.
That's crazy.
I would have said like 15.
2012.
14, maybe.
25, 24. There were so many.
I was at a strip club watching that game.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I was
I would not have
working.
guessed you said
I was
that.
working a radio station event at a strip club when that game was
Good
happening.
clarification.
Yeah.
There. Good.
Well, there as a customer. I wasn't there as a customer. I was working.
That was an incredible game. There was a lot of NFL talent between the both of those teams in that one. Texter from the 344. I went to Williams-Brice for Kentucky versus South Carolina in 07, 3 versus 6. Norwood returned a fumble for a touchdown. The stadium shook beneath my feet. That's a good one.
Are you the kind of guy that if you go to a game, assuming you win, you'll go back and watch it on TV later?
Yeah.
I want to hear what the announcers have to say.
772 says, as a Georgia fan, watching Keely Ringo take the interception back to the house, and the Natty still gives me goosebumps. So I'll be watching the 2022 National Championship again. Well, listen, Texter, I'm not trying to start a war with you, but you just better be glad that those two critical key players listen, not taking anything away from the Georgia dynasty, the mini dynasty that's going on right now, but in 2022, that Natty, the way that Bama beat Georgia in the regular season and then lost the two key players that were out for the rest of the season, that game's a lot different. They lost their best players, and I'm not saying Georgia doesn't win that game. I just would have loved to see that game if Bama was healthy. All right, 5 o'clock fight next. It is 5 o'clock, and it is not time for Diesel and I to agree.
Not time for us to hug.
Yeah, we don't hug it out here. This is not the time for that. There's a time and a place for that, but it's not 5 o'clock. Surely there's no way we can have 3 brand new topics to fight about today, right? We've ran out of topics. However, we do. We have 3 good ones today, and you can play along. It is the 5 o'clock fight.
And nobody's leaving unscathed. 3 topics, 1 winner. It's the 5 o'clock fight on Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson on the Fan Upstate.
All right, if today is your first time tuning in, whether you're tuning in on the old-fashioned radio, 97.1 Spartanburg, 97.7 Greenville, or you're listening on the Odyssey app, or you're watching on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, this is the 5 o'clock fight. There are 3 rounds. Diesel and I will disagree with each other on all 3 rounds, and you, the Tolos, you, the audience, the listener, decide who wins and who loses. Text the show beginning right now, 71307. Start your text with the word fan. Let's get it going. Diesel, we talked about this back in segment number 1. This one's tough, but it has to do with the Atlanta Braves, who did win 2 of 3 before the All-Star break, right? Maybe a little positivity to take with them into the second half of the season. Round 1, will the Atlanta Braves make a move in your mind before the deadline?
So this one is a tricky one because I can really paint you in a corner with my answer. However, Cole, I'm going to give you a little wiggle room on your answer because that's a really tough spot to put you in. I'm going to say, yes, they do make a move, but it's not going to be with a hitter.
Oh,
I think the move that they make will come in the form of a really good late inning pitcher. So a bullpen guy, I think, is going to be the move. I know we talked earlier about an offensive player, so if you want to go there, I'm going to give you the chance to go there. But I think they do make a move. They feel pretty good about where they are on the offensive side, considering things have started to kind of pick up a little bit over the last 10 games or so. There's been some inconsistency, 2 games, I think, where they got blanked. But I mean, they're back to scoring 5, 6, 7 runs a game. So I think they realize that the bullpen is their biggest liability. I don't care how many hitters you get. If you don't have a good bullpen, you're not going to lose. You're not going to win a lot of games. So, yes, they make a move, but it's going to be in the pen.
I don't think the Braves make a move.
Really?
No, I think
for
whatever reason, and I don't agree with it, I think they're happy with Kelnick. And I'm not saying he can't be a good player one day, but I'm just saying right now he's not a guy that's going to help you make a postseason run. For whatever reason, I don't know that management and Alex Anthopoulos feels as if there's enough talent right now to plug a guy in and go make a World Series run. Without Strider, without Acuna, without Michael Harris, there's so many guys that are out. It's going to be tough to plug in one guy and rely on that one guy to take you on a magnificent, miraculous postseason run circa 2021. I wish it would, Diesel, but I say no, they will not. The Atlanta Braves will not make a move.
So no Jazz Chisholm, no.
I wish.
No,
I wish.
Wow.
I don't think so, though.
Wow.
I don't think so. What do you say? 71307. Also, if you're one of the 125 people watching on the stream, now 126, chime in right now for round 1.
Round 2, fight.
All right, Diesel. If your team's playing, but you can't watch, you're working, you're shopping with your wife or whoever, wherever you are, right? You're doing something other than watching the game. Do you constantly check the score, real time, bam, 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 or do you ignore it, unplug, and watch the game later?
Oh, man, I am walking around Target like this. I am looking at it constantly. I'm doing that little drag down thing to get it to refresh as many times as I possibly can. I mean, I am glued to my phone during a game. If I can't watch it, if I'm somewhere that I can't, I am sitting there. But good thing now is so many games are available to stream and watch live. But hey, sometimes you just don't have the bandwidth wherever you are to make that happen. But no, man, like I am inside this thing when my team is on.
For the rare occasion that I can't watch it, and I do say rare, I usually try to unplug. Like during football season, unfortunately, there are many Saturdays, many games I don't watch because it also is during hunting season, right? And they happen at the same time. So I'm in the woods a lot during the fall. And I would rather go home and watch it without knowing, even if it is an hour later, right? I'd rather go home and watch it and feel like I'm watching it for the first time. And that's the days
You have
of
that kind of discipline?
Well, that's what I was going to say. The days of that are just, it's so hard to do that.
Well, now everybody wants to text you also.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, did you see this play? Oh, my God.
And
Can
then you
believe
get
it?
and you look on your phone as an update, ESPN, or you turn the radio on and they're talking. It's so hard to unplug.
Dude, when I am watching, if I'm watching a game and I know I'm watching on streaming, so I know there's a little bit of a delay, I have to take my watch off.
Oh yeah,
I can't because it'll alert you immediately when something happens. I don't want to know. I need to wait to see it live.
I didn't think about that. I forgot the watch. I used to have an Apple Watch, but I hadn't had one in so long. You can't even wear the watch now because they'll kill you. The days of watching it, though.
It's just like pick up the pace ESPN. Why can't I watch this game live? Why do I have to watch it on a 30-second delay? And I've got other friends who are streaming it also. They may be streaming it with a different device or something like that, but they're only 15 seconds behind. I'm 35 seconds to 45 seconds behind.
YouTube TV is significant. I don't know what the exact seconds are or if it's a minute, but like if I'm on the phone with a friend of mine who has cable, watching a game, cable's ahead of
always
you.
ahead.
Yeah. I guess it's the closest in terms of being right there in real time.
Probably like a 10-second delay just in case somebody drops an F-bomb on the radio or on TV.
On the field
streaks on the field.
So that's round 2. If you're on the fence, we have one more for you to decide.
Final round. Fight.
All right, last one for the day. Yesterday, I did something I shouldn't have. I got tempted. Ruby from Ingles brought over some delicious donuts yesterday, Diesel. And I had to just get one. And then one became 2. I stopped at 2, just so you know. But the donuts we had yesterday at Ingles were phenomenal. And we were talking about this yesterday, so we had to bring it to the 5 o'clock fight. The superior donut, the glazed donut like we had yesterday, or the cake donut. This one might raise a lot of red flags.
This is a debate in my house every single time we get donuts.
Really?
And the truth is, both have their merits.
They do.
But
They're both good.
Only one can be superior, and that is the glazed donut.
Really?
The plain glazed, chef's kiss, delicious. The glazed with chocolate on top, delicious. I mean, even like a stuffed donut where they fill it, that's still a glazed donut. It's just got room for filling inside. You can't touch a glazed donut. There's no way, shape, or form that anything is ever better than a glazed yeast donut.
They're good. To your point, both are incredible. We're not, we're splitting hairs for
I never
sure
say
on
no
this
to
one.
either one of them.
No, I wouldn't either. However, I think I just grew up eating so many glazed donuts. I don't know if I've gotten tired of them, but I do feel like if I want a donut now, it is just something different. Like I have a better appetite for a cake donut. I love the cake donut. A cake donut, I guess you could even consider the small white ones that we used to eat. You still eat those? I hadn't eaten those in forever. Yeah, I love them.
Yeah, dude. I used to sneak
good.
in the house. I remember one time I got caught sneaking into the house to steal a Sweet 16.
They're so good.
And my parents caught me immediately because I didn't realize I had powdered sugar all over my face.
The white stuff. The evidence was on your face. It really is. I like both, but I'm going cake because I think I got tired of the glaze too much. And again, I'll eat both.
I know you're not a coffee guy.
No.
But do you dunk your cake donut in your coffee?
It's good. It helps because you don't get as much of the coffee flavor. Like,
oh, come on.
It helps. I don't mind
make a cup of coffee after you said that.
I don't mind. I love the smell of coffee. You know that. If I drink coffee, I have to doctor it up a lot. I mean, a lot. So quick recap. Round 1. Will the Braves make a move before the deadline? I say no. Diesel says yes. Round 2, if your team's playing but you cannot watch, Do you constantly check the score to stay up to date, or do you ignore it and go back and watch the game later? Diesel says he's got to watch it in real time. I say go back and watch later so you can kind of feel the anticipation, the nerves. And then round 3. Yesterday, we had some great donuts from Ingles. Superior donut right here on the 5 o'clock fight. The glazed donut or the cake donut. Diesel goes glazed. I go with the cake donut. Both are great, but we have to choose between one. And if you want to submit a fight, you can. Here's how.
What do you want Diesel and Cole Bryson to fight about next?
If you've got an ass, I'll kick it.
Submit your topics to Diesel at thefanupstate.com. Subject line fight on the Fan Upstate.
Now I want donuts. And we just had them yesterday.
All kinds of donuts.
God.
All kinds of donuts
We
are
do
good.
this every 5. We're always
Except for
talking about
raspberry stuff.
food.
Those are not good.
So I'll say this. I'll eat them. I don't love stuffed donuts.
Not even with like buttercream inside.
I'll eat
or
them. What are they?
chocolate inside.
Yeah, I mean,
come on.
no. If it's the
Lemon
last
meringue?
one, see, I don't like the lemon meringue at all.
Huh?
Not a fan.
That's fair.
Not a fan.
I think you're wrong, but that's fine. That's
I'm
good.
not
You know what? I'm glad you don't like those because next time somebody
More
brings
for you.
donuts, there's more for me. Yeah.
And I wasn't even here to. Was it the other day we got an
ice
email?
cream. Yeah, we got
Oh,
an
it was
email. Ice
not
cream was here.
donuts. I was here. Were you here?
If it was donuts, I'd have been here,
Who brings ice cream at 10 o'clock in the morning?
right? Because they want the morning shows to
We
talk
missed
about
out. We missed
it. Yeah,
out
they
on
want
the
the
ice
morning
cream.
shows to talk about the ice cream.
Let's see. What are the results? You continue to get your thoughts in on the stream. 126 people watching right now. Also on the text line 71307. Start your text with the word fan.
Yeah, I'll start with the stream, and Madcraft always right on it. Early in the stream, he says Diesel gets the clean sweep.
Ah,
Alex Anthopoulos is almost always aggressive, and Cole Krispy Kreme would like a word with you. Yeah, that's true.
they don't have cake.
See, I gave you the opportunity. No, I don't think they do.
Oh,
Madcraft, it's been a while since I've been in a Krispy Kreme.
me too.
I go to the drive-thru a lot, and when you go to the drive-thru, you order what it is you know that you like, right?
Sure.
You don't get to really look at the case. Do they sell cake donuts at Krispy Kreme? Or
They've
they
got to now, right?
Yeah, are they exclusively yeast?
Surely not.
Donuts.
They surely
See,
don't discriminate like
I
that.
gave you the chance there, Cole, with fight number 1.
Yeah, you did.
To see if you would say yes, they'll make a trade.
think you- I don't
but
have
it'll
faith.
be a bat, not so much an arm.
Mm-mm.
Wow.
I don't have
okay.
faith.
You told those watching on the stream, jump in and keep your votes coming in. I know we always really crush it on the text line with these.
344 says Diesel round 1. He hadn't got the rest of his in yet. I don't believe. Cornchip says, sorry, Cole, you got round 1, but Diesel gets the last 2.
Yeah, where were you yesterday, Cornchip?
Oh,
I saw you,
man.
I saw you texting. I'm just giving you a hard time, Cornchip.
Couldn't make it.
Yeah, he did message in and let us know that he couldn't make it, so we do appreciate it. That way we weren't sitting there like a dog at the door waiting for
midnight.
somebody to come home. Yeah.
491 says, round 1, Cole. Round 2, Diesel. Round 3, tie. Depends on my mood.
There's no ties here.
Come on. There's no
ties
crying
here,
in baseball.
Texter. We need a vote.
G says Diesel wins 2, Cole wins 1 and 3. So I finally got a win today. John Dog. Diesel round 1, Diesel round 2, Diesel round 3, glazed donuts for the sweet.
I'm going to tell you the truth, Cole. All those donuts that didn't get eaten yesterday came home with me.
How many more?
There were like 6 more donuts. There's a half a dozen donuts left, and they're sitting in my pantry.
How many's left now?
There's 4 because I had 2 of them this
They're
morning.
so good.
They're so even the next day, they're still such good
I
donuts.
told Ruby yesterday that was the first time I'd had donuts from Ingles. I forget about them because they're back in the deli, on the right, kind of tucked away, and I forgot about them. They're good.
Maybe it's a good thing that we don't set up next to the bakery.
Yeah. 100%. I said deli. I'm sorry, I meant bakery. There's a good thing that I forget about them because they were really, really good. Texter says there's a fresh donut place at the Silos in Easley. Texter, don't tell me that.
I drove by there last week.
Really?
Yeah.
Said so. Oh, Amazon guy said that. He said, "OMG, so
we
good."
have gone on a kick, Cole, over the past 2 months or so. Getting up early on Sunday mornings, going to these bougie new donut joints.
Really?
All over. There's Scout Donuts.
There's bougie donuts?
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I didn't know
Scout
that.
Donuts close to downtown on East North Street. I mean, we stood in line. You're gonna say this is some white people stuff to do. We stood in line for 40 minutes for donuts. Now we also went at the worst possible time that we could go. right? We went at like 11:30 in the morning on a Sunday. So like church had just let out. There's a bunch of people getting donuts, right? So we went at a bad time, but it's also a small shop, right? So they can't make a ton of donuts in there. It was out of this world because they're like croissant style, flaky layer on top of layer.
Okay.
Oh my God. It was so good.
Is Duck Donuts considered a bougie donut?
I would say, yeah.
It's good, though.
Duck Donut. I've never been to Duck Donuts. I know there's one here.
So good.
There's another new one. Blanking on the name of it. It's on Lawrence Road in Greenville.
We need a donut sponsor. Bad.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, God, I would be 100. Rob Brown has a sponsor about losing weight. Me and you have a donut sponsor. Oh, that'd be good. Texter says glazed donuts more than cake, so Diesel wins.
Parlor Donuts is the one that I'm thinking of. Parlor on Lawrence Road. Really good.
Bo
Expensive,
says,
but good.
Bo goes Diesel with a clean sweep. That's twice for me this week. People are going to start to talk.
The texter who said that we tied on the third and final round said, fine, glazed donuts more than cake, so Diesel wins it. Yeah.
God.
Nice.
I mean, I think I got one win today.
Would you wait in line for donuts, like a 40-minute line for donuts, if you knew that they were going to be that good?
40 minutes is
and
tough.
expensive. And expensive.
I don't know that I can say.
You're a little more pragmatic than I am with your money, right?
I'm impatient.
You'll say, yeah.
I'm impatient. Hey, my ADHD is probably kicking in. I don't know. 40 minutes is a long time, isn't it?
Texter says, y'all need to stop this conversation. My stomach is growling on my way home from work. Well, Texter, you got the technology. Just pull in.
I know, really.
Just pull in, get yourself a little snack. You know what's wrong with a little snack?
The 5 o'clock fights that involve food are tough because it is at 5.
Texter, I don't know if we shouldn't read that.
I'm not reading that.
We shouldn't read that.
I am not doing it.
God.
Let's see. Who's the number? 618. Texter. We'll laugh at it. I'm not reading that. I'm not doing it.
You know what's funny, Cole, is if we omit the dirty word in that, it makes it sound dirtier what he's saying. Texter says, I like to blank my donut holes.
What
do you guys think? What do you think Texter said?
I had water in my mouth when you said that.
Brandon Lee said, had a buddy said he waited 2 hours when Whataburger opened in Boiling Springs.
So that's outrageous, number one. But
we talked about this in the 5 o'clock fight earlier this week.
Well, the line was,
are you a go early guy or wait?
We did. I saw it the day it opened. I counted. Did I tell you this already? I counted 135 cars.
No.
Yep. And Brandon's right. So
wait, if you're that impatient, how did you stick around long enough to count 135?
I just drove. So there's a new Target behind the new Whataburger in Boiling Springs, right? So I pulled in because I took a video of it. I meant to post it, but I forgot. So I pulled in, saw where the drive-through, like the window is, and I saw the line. So it went into the Target parking lot, stretched the entire perimeter. So I drove and counted, and I stopped at 135 cars at Old Furnace Road. And guess what? There was a line all the way down Old Furnace Road.
That's ludicrous to me to wait that long. I mean, think about it. It's a new shop.
And it's a burger.
So you've got a somewhat untrained staff. Like they may be trained, but they're not really operating at peak efficiency
not
yet. And then everybody's trying to learn the menu because it's a new restaurant here. You don't, a lot of times when you go to a fast food restaurant nowadays, you know what you're going to order before you get there. So it speeds up the ordering process just a little bit. Now everybody's got to stop, peruse the whole menu. It's going to take an extra, 2 minutes per car. That slows. I don't understand that.
If
That's
they're
what I'm
giving
saying.
away money or gift cards,
right?
I'll do it. But for a burger and fries, where the fries taste just like any other establishment, their burgers are big and they're good, but you can go to local establishments here in the upstate and get a better burger. Sorry.
Yeah. Like you're going to wait an hour plus for a $12 fast food burger.
People not have jobs.
Yeah. What are y'all doing with your lives?
Are y'all hiring?
We had a texter earlier, Cole, who asked the question when we were talking about Caleb Williams and the Heisman, who asked, well, who do you think deserved the Heisman Trophy all those years? Well, texter, I'm not going to get into all those years because that's a real big question. But the year that Caleb Williams won the Heisman, which was 2022, he was a finalist facing off against Stetson Bennett, Max Duggan, and C.J. Stroud. And who would I have given the award to that year? I would have given it to Max Duggan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I would have given it to Max Duggan. So,
I thought you were going to say CJ.
So TCU that year, Cole, was 11-1.
Yeah, they were good.
He They trailed in games against Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Texas Tech, and Baylor. So he had 4 come-from-behind victories. Took them to the Big 12 championship game, which they lost, but they erased an 11-point second-half deficit to even force overtime. Got into the playoff, a school as small with a small budget and not a lot of history and prestige behind them. TCU getting into the playoff and beating Michigan in the semifinal of that game, of that playoff. And you're telling me Max Duggan was not a more valuable player to his team than Caleb Williams was that year?
There were 3 really hard choices that year. And by the way, Garrett Riley maybe had 1 or 2 things to do with Max Duggan that year.
Hopefully he can bring some of that to Clemson this year.
It'd be nice. It's crazy, though. Not to go back into that conversation and dive right back into it, but real quick before the break, there are talking about deserving. I think there are some you can say, I think Lamar deserved it in 16, but I also think Deshaun was just as deserving. Like Deshaun won a national championship, Lamar didn't make the postseason.
Yeah.
So,
but I don't want the Heisman Trophy to necessarily be an award for the national championship winning quarterback.
No, I don't think so. I don't either. I'm just saying when you have a quarterback that leads the team to a national championship, I think it adds more value to that guy. I think Lamar deserved it. I have no problem with Lamar getting it. It's just when you tell me Deshaun Watson didn't win a Heisman Trophy, that's that I don't know. I cannot fathom that. And if Lamar Diesel wasn't in the same year, he would have. But Lamar was he was special, man.
When we come back, Cole, we're going to keep it in the fight sphere and talk about Mike Tyson v. Jake Paul. It's back on. That's next on the Fan Upstate. Outsider looking in, Cole, what's more respectable? Jake Paul beating a 32-year-old MMA and bare knuckle fighter Michael Perry, who he's going to fight here in just a couple of days, or beating a 58-year-old former heavyweight in Mike Tyson.
And how old's the first dude?
32. Jake Paul is 27.
Which is more respectable?
Yeah.
Like you want to here's the problem. You want to say beating Mike Tyson's more respectable. However, is beating Papa Tyson, he's 60 years old. I mean, almost. I don't know that I can say that's respectable.
Should a redneck get respect for beating up his dad in a backyard brawl? Because Mike Tyson is old enough to beat Jake Paul's dad.
That's what I'm saying. Plenty old enough. Let me ask you this. Would you give, let's say, Anthony Edwards credit for beating Shaq right now?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Nobody would give.
Well, Shaq is also in god-awful shape.
Well, he's a shape. Circle's a shape. but I'm just saying, like, or whoever.
So let's just say 10, 15 years from now, somebody beats LeBron in a one-on-one. But, like, I have no reason to believe LeBron James is going to let himself go in the way that Shaq has let himself go since playing.
I'd hope not.
Yeah. So the Mike Tyson-Jake Paul fight is back on, by the way. If you haven't heard this, it was supposed to be this Saturday. But now that fight is going to take place on November 15th, AT&T Stadium in Arlington. What kept Mike Tyson out of the original scheduled fight was an ulcer. He's been dealing with that with his doctor. According to his doctors, everything is back on track. He's good to go. He's training. He's doing a lot of cardio. He's doing resistance training at this point. I mean, I can't even imagine, Cole, what kind of pain you would be in if they didn't realize that he had an ulcer. Like, let's just say it was a really small one, or let's just say he had a little polyp in his stomach and he took a stomach shot and that ruptured that thing mid-fight.
Oh, God.
How brutal and how much that would suck to have that happen.
But that's the downside of being that age. And
yeah.
Listen, the bottom line is he shouldn't be fighting. He shouldn't be.
I think fighting is all Mike Tyson knows.
Well, it
right?
probably is.
I mean, we were talking about this in the break. I saw footage of Mike Tyson on Logan Paul's video podcast, I guess.
Yeah.
His show, YouTube show, wherever it is. And Mike was shoveling massive quantities of hallucinogenic mushrooms into his mouth.
So not like the ones at the salad bar.
No, like, so I get the impression, I don't know the show, I don't know the guys on this show, but just by reading their face, reading their actions, they all do a lot of drugs. And so like they brought out this handful of mushrooms. And I'm not talking like a handful with like 3 or 4 little mushrooms in it. It was a pile of mushrooms. And the way they all looked at it, they looked at it and said, "Oh my God, that's a lot." And then Mike is like,
something a drug dealer would say.
Yeah, Mike is like, "Well, that's nothing to me," and just
ate them
to
all.
the house.
Ugh.
To the house. So Mike's gotta be messed up. His body's gotta be just beat up from years of doing this to himself. Not only just taking shots, but just training all the time. That's really tough on your body.
How many shots / drugs / mushrooms / whatever you want to put on there? How much do you think he will have to take before the fight? Because he'll have to be.
Well, none, because I mean,
do they
is this a sanctioned fight? Are they going to have to take drug tests before this fight? I mean, it's completely bogus. We've talked about fights and what we think, I guess, about the modern era of boxing, not the legitimate boxing, right? Because there's still a lot of legitimate boxing going on. But what people talk about in boxing are these over-the-top, silly, Jake Paul takes on Conor McGregor, or Conor McGregor takes on, who did he fight like a couple of years ago? An ex-boxer. Was it De La Hoya? No, it wasn't De La Hoya.
I know you're talking
Who
about.
was it? Was it Manny Pacquiao?
Yeah, it was Manny.
Was it Pacquiao? Yeah, I mean, like, that's what people watch now, right? They want to watch these over the top. These are the things that we used to see in movies, right? Where
Yeah.
where you would see both of these guys show up and be enforcers for some like illegal organization, and that's the closest we would get would be to see these two guys face off in a movie.
So it is a sanctioned fight.
Okay.
And in the state of Texas, all fighters are required to face a random drug. Here's where I find this comical. It says a random drug test during the day of their fight. Is that random? How's that random?
Well, I mean, it could be a 10 a.m. drug test, could be a 10.
If it's in your body, it's in your body by then, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's how Ryan Garcia got caught.
Unless there's ways to artificially mask something in your system. So, like,
well, there are.
If you, I mean, what's to say they couldn't wake you up at 2:30 in the morning and say, "Hey, take this drug test right now"?
Well, they have these things. A friend of mine was telling me just recently about a story with a guy. I've never used them. Obviously, I don't do drugs, but they have these things you can take that mask the drugs for
the test
18 hours.
Okay, so it could neutralize. It doesn't neutralize the drug in your system.
Yeah.
It just fools the drug test to say that this is a clean drug test.
That's correct. And then Ryan Garcia, the boxer who was in the news recently a few months ago, same thing happened to him. He won the fight against a really good boxer, and then they came out after this fight, which I don't love in boxing.
Yeah.
Why do they test him the day of and then let the fight go on? Then Ryan Garcia's popped.
Yeah.
And now he's banned for a year.
It's because the drug test, I'm sure, takes a little bit of time to perform. But also at the same time, you've got weeks and weeks of buildup. You've got people who have spent, probably hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, buying pay-per-views to see these fights. The fight is going to happen.
Yeah.
No matter what. But the legitimacy of the fight can then be questioned after the fight, right?
Which is just dumb.
It is dumb. It is dumb. Why go through all of this? Why potentially, harm yourself long term or die for a fight that may ultimately get thrown out?
And oh, by the way, we're going to spend millions of dollars on this event.
Yeah. Well, that's the answer right there. It's money, right? There's so much money that's gone in to promote it. There's so much money being made on the fight. Of course, you've got the undercard and all that happens before it, but nobody's there for the undercard. They're there for the main event. And could you imagine the backlash if you had some huge main event fight that was set up to happen, and then like 10 minutes before the fight, somebody runs in with a piece of paper that says, no, stop the fight.
Yeah,
this guy tested positive for marijuana.
Everybody's already there. Can you imagine that? They're both in the corners, and here come. It'll be like WWE, like this guy just running down the ramp.
Yep.
Now there is. I don't know if you know this or the Tolos know or not, but there. And I need to text my buddy Scott, who goes to these events regularly. There's a local circuit of professional boxing that comes through Spartanburg, Greenville, like 2 or 3 times a year. And I went to it last summer at the Spartanburg Marriott. Phenomenal boxing. That's locally, and I don't know the name of the circuit or when the next time they're here is, but it's one of those like almost like a pro-am kind of deal in golf where the guys that come through they're not at the top of the game, but they're still really, really good and it's still really entertaining. And I need to find out when that is again because I went last summer, I believe it was, and it's phenomenal. I enjoy watching boxing. I tell you what I don't do when the weekends get here. I don't know when anything is. Like, I guess I have
That's why I love college football being on Saturdays.
Right.
I'm a creature of habit.
I don't know. Like, I'll hear somebody at a restaurant or say, oh, the big fight tonight or MMA or UFC.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like, they don't, I feel like they market it, but I feel like that there's a lot of the general public who just don't know. You have to follow it and go look it up to find out when it is. There's not a set time in a day.
So in reading up on this fight coming up, learning a little bit about Mike Perry and who he is.
Never heard of him.
Yeah, he's like you said, he's 32, so he's old for a fighter.
Yeah,
right. Came out of MMA first, and now is making a name for himself in bare knuckle fighting, which is gaining popularity.
Which is crazy.
It's just crazy. Yeah, I mean, are we so desensitized in this country to where we said boxing, where there's rules, there's time limits, there's big padded gloves on them. I understand that they're not big padded. You know what I'm saying? There's gloves on them where you're probably not going to totally deform someone's face. People are like, Yawn. That's boring.
Yeah.
I want MMA where they've got smaller gloves and they can use their legs. They can kick. They can put each other into holds. And in MMA, I guess, is getting to the point where even that's boring to the average fight fan, or to a subsection of the fight fans. Better to say it that way. A subsection of fight fans are like, well, that's dull. Gloves. Oh, yawn. I want to see
more violent.
I want to see a more violent form of fighting. And
have you seen those slap?
That's so stupid.
Is it slap boxing? Is that
yeah, slap fighting.
Well, they will literally stand closer than me and you are, and just hard as they can. I mean, it looks brutally violent.
It does. My big problem with the slap fighting is they use the hard part of their hand, like the butt of their hand.
Ugh.
They're not slapping with the middle of the palm out to the fingers.
Well,
they're slapping with
right?
the hard part. And then, of course, they're hitting you like right on the temple, right on the side of the, it could kill somebody doing that. That's so dumb.
You've
and
got to
so
be
weird.
I truly believe you have to have, like, I'm not saying something wrong with you, but you've got to have a screw loose in your brain.
You just got to not care.
Like, same thing with bull. I've always thought the same thing with professional bull riding.
Yeah.
I mean, you have for me to go get on a bull and just let that thing run roughshop and just here I go, or stand here and get slapped, I'll pass.
I mean, why not just advance it to standing there and just taking a single punch, just a jab. That's all they can do. They can't throw a hook. They can't throw an uppercut, just a jab, just to see who can take a punch and not fall down. That's so stupid.
Fat Page says gloves are used to protect your hands, not your face, or not their face. Bare knuckle is far safer than taping your wrist and teeing off on people until your hands break.
You may have a little bit of a point, but like I flat out don't believe you that bare knuckle boxing is safer. Are you saying it because when your wrist isn't taped, you can't punch somebody as hard?
But you just said the gloves are used to protect your hands.
Yeah.
So if you don't have gloves on and your bare knuckle, what's
the
protecting your
gloves are your hands, not your wrist.
Yeah, but bare knuckle, what's protecting either one?
Nothing. Nothing.
I'm good. I'll pass. No way.
Yeah. These fights are just over the top.
So say it again. When's the new the schedule?
Okay. So that fight will be rescheduled. So the previously scheduled fight between Mike Tyson and Jake Paul will now be between Jake Paul and Mike Perry
this weekend.
And then the rematch will be scheduled, but the rematch, well, not a rematch, the fight between Mike Tyson and Jake Paul has been rescheduled to November 15th at Jarrah World.
That's a long way away.
Yeah, and apparently Mike Tyson has given Jake Paul, his blessing to go and do it. When there's big fights like this, there's always a lot of negotiating back and forth. You can't take a fight in this period of time. Yada yada yada.
Well, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, since it had to be.
It's all an exhibition anyway. Does it really matter if Jake Paul's face gets pulverized? No.
I'll watch because I think it's on Netflix. I think if you have Netflix, I think it's free. Obviously, you have to pay for Netflix, but as long as there's not a big college game on that 15th of November, which there probably will be closer than the season by then.
November 15th is a Friday.
Oh, is it?
It's a Friday. So you'll have at least a game that Friday.
That's right.
Because there's always something.
Yeah.
Good chance at least. And you got high school football.
Yeah, and that's right before Thanksgiving.
You Colin Burns.
If they're still in the playoffs. Because Thanksgiving has moved this year. Did you know that? They moved Thanksgiving.
Last Thursday?
I didn't know you could do that. Who has the power in this country to move a holiday?
Un-American.
I mean, come on. All right, Daily Wires next. Getting you caught up on what's going on in the sports world. You may call them headlines, but on Wire to Wire, we call them the Daily Wires.
Buzz.
There it is. The illustrious buzz. By one of us every single day. We worked hard on that. The Lakers got their first win of the summer as Bronny finally scored more than 1 point. 12 today in his first win, or last night, excuse me, rather. Reports are that the WNBA will get $200 million per year, and it has union executives concerned. We'll go more into that as the week and next week goes on, because that is interesting. The Fevers, Caitlin Clark, had 19 assists, a record.
Whoa!
In the loss to the Wings. So she had 19 assists, but maybe a few more points were needed last night.
I know we just played this game last week, but I could not venture to guess what city
this is terrible.
The Wings are from. The Wings?
We just talked about this.
I don't even remember there being a Wings. The Wings. What city is
Dallas?
That? Is it the Dallas Wings? That's a stupid name for a team.
Why do we? Yeah, it's Dallas. It's Dallas. I thought
you
it
could
was,
have picked anything, and you picked the Wings.
I don't know where that came
call
from.
yourselves the Feathers while you're at it.
Feathers.
God, that
nice.
sucks.
That's real nice.
That's why nobody remembers the mascots to these teams.
Yeah,
because the mascots suck.
The round one of the Open Championship began today. An update for you. A little Tiger update. He shot 8 over 79 in round one. Might miss the cut. Shocker, right? Is this Jamie or Hami or?
I'm going to say Jamie.
Jamie Montojo. Jamie Montojo. How about that? Eagled the par 4 first hole. That's A for effort there on that one.
Appreciate the attempt there.
Yeah, listen, I try. I'm not the best with pronunciations. I'm going to go again. Jamie Montajo.
Let's see. Justin Thomas is in third place at a -3. Shane Lowry second place at a -5, and
Big Bad
Daniel Brown leading the charge. -6 today.
I thought earlier Bryson might have fallen a little bit.
Let's see. Where is everybody? I got Xander Schauffele tied for 4th. I've got Brooks Koepka tied for 11th place. Scotty Scheffler also tied for 11th place.
How about that?
Bryson DeChambeau. Where's Bryson?
Where is he?
Where the heck is Bryson?
What happened? We'll have to look into that.
That's really interesting. He has fallen. Jordan Spieth tied for 18th. Bryson DeChambeau. I'm scrolling
MIA
down and down
is
and
what
down.
he is. He's MIA.
Did he even finish the round? Because he is way down
Weird.
there.
We'll have to investigate. The MLB season starts back tomorrow as the Atlanta Braves have 67 games remaining on their slate. That's a lot of games, but it will go by fast. They're currently 53-42, 8.5 back in the NL East. So here we go. Buckle up. The last 67. You need them. You need a win as many as you can here, Atlanta.
Update on Bryson DeChambeau. He finished +5 today.
Ooh.
Tied for 96.
So I must have been looking at something completely wrong earlier.
Well, either that or he really struggled on the back nine.
Yeah,
not entirely sure. I love courses like this where they struggle a little bit. I mean, you've got only about 20 guys who are under par in the first round.
I like it. A little countdown update as part of our Daily Wires, just to get you excited about where we are. 36 days until high school football, 37 days until college football, 49 days until the NFL regular season, and 23 days until the Panthers and Patriots preseason. How about that?
How much time can you really give a preseason game? Do you watch the first quarter? Once they start
I
putting
watch
in
the
backups,
Cowboys, but that's it.
Will you watch the Cowboys' entire preseason games?
Not the entire. Not normal. The last one, maybe, but no, not normally. Not normally. How about this? Over in Paris, the mayor said, I'll show you guys. He swam in the Seine River to demonstrate its safety ahead of the Olympics. He said, look, I can do it. There's no poop. I'm going to show you guys that it's okay to swim in this river. And that's exactly what he did.
Video of him doing like little splash, like get away from me.
I saw a picture of him. It's crazy. So the river's safe. Everything's good. We talked about that a lot, but all good now. All clear. Head coaches, big day in Clemson today. Head coaches Brad Brownell, Mike Noonan, Eddie Rodowski, and Eric Bakich. Also Kelly Hester, all agreed to new contracts with Clemson University in a move that was approved by the Board of Trustees Compensation Committee today. Notable, the two names, Bakich and Brownell, not going anywhere yet, especially on the Brownell front.
Reading between the lines, why didn't Dabo get a new contract?
Well, you got to win in the playoffs to get a new contract, right? And I'm sure his contract's maxed out. All right, last one. Russell Westbrook is expected to join the Nuggets after the Clippers-Jazz trade. Utah waives him, buys him out. Woj earlier today. That will make the 6th team for Russell Westbrook.
Journeyman, to say the least.
Yeah.
Ugh. Russell Westbrook, just go ahead and call it, man.
He needs to.
Just go ahead. When we come back, we're going to replay a conversation that we had earlier. Really fascinating. Kind of look behind enemy lines for those of you ACC fans. We went deep with Kurt Weiler, senior writer who covers Florida State for the Osceola Rivals, rivals.com. Great conversation with him about the arrival of DJU, how he's changed and grown. And, of course, a lot about these recent rumors about Florida State and Clemson heading to the Big 12. We'll get to that next on the Fan Upstate.
Let's go.
From the fields to the courts and the gridiron to the tracks.
Electrifying sports talk from start to finish.
You're going wire to wire.
With Diesel and Cole Bryson.
On the Fan Upstate.
Talking season continues, a time that we love. Getting those lists out, getting ready for August. The coaches don't love it, but we do. And speaking of talking season, a lot of talk lately about Florida State. We've talked about them a lot this week with rumors with them in the Big 12 and in SEC and Big 10, or conferences not wanting them. Let me just say it that way. But it's time now to bring in Kurt Weiler. Kurt is the senior writer. He covers Florida State for Osceola Rivals, rivals.com. Kurt, have you remembered a time that non-football, non-field related Florida State's been in the news as much as they are now?
It's been a minute for sure. It's been more the on-field stuff, but yeah, especially since December, this has really ramped up. And obviously, I mean, but even dating back further than that, it's crazy the amount of court stuff that I never imagined I would have to cover in my job.
Kurt, what did you make as you read the article yesterday, the assertions laid out in Brett McMurphy's article, where he says he and his colleagues spoke to multiple Big Ten and SEC officials, from coaches to administrators to television people, et cetera. And they were saying things like chaotic and disruptive in reference to Florida State, and as a reason why neither of those conferences would be too interested in the Seminoles.
I take a lot of that with a grain of salt. Obviously, some not great quotes in there. You don't want to be called a disruptive partner. It's not a great tag, but I would venture to say there are plenty of other schools and plenty of other athletic directors who, if they were in a similar spot, would go about it the same way. I think it's a factor of the situation that Florida State finds itself in. I mean, I roll my eyes, especially when it comes to the Big Ten, at the notion of what would Florida State add to the Big Ten. I mean, Florida State would add a lot to the Big Ten. Obviously, the SEC, you can more make that case. But I did find it funny for all the quotes in there. It was a lot of, I think twice someone said, but never say never. Like, because it seems like the what they kept attaching to that is we're not interested in Florida State or Clemson if the ACC survives. I'm not convinced the ACC does survive if Florida State and Clemson manage to get a way out. It feels like that's why this has been at a bit of a stalemate, and neither side's really giving anything right now, because I think the ACC knows it would not be in a great spot if it lost Florida State. So it makes sense in a way. They're not going to come out and say they're interested when Florida State is still very much locked into the ACC. I think we won't really know the truth of the matter until Florida State manages to find a way out of the ACC, and then we'll kind of see where the truth lies. Because I do remember seeing similar things about the West Coast teams in the Big Ten, and obviously that ended up happening.
Kurt, it's fascinating that we're talking in the upstate of South Carolina about Florida State as much as we are, with the lawsuits, with the ACC, with Clemson. And oh, by the way, Florida State has a former Clemson quarterback. Have you heard anything about the lawsuits and the destinations? I know I agree with what you said just now about they've got to get out of the ACC first. But even to that point, have you heard anything from Florida State officials and where they might see this going?
No, I mean, it feels like it's tough. It feels like destined in some way for a settlement, just because it's hard to fathom this actually going to court and like the lawsuit actually being presided over by a judge. It just kind of feels like both sides have a lot to lose there. But obviously, I think in a lot of ways the ACC has more to lose, because I do think the ACC would have to really pivot if they did agree to a settlement with Florida State and Clemson. I mean, I know at the base level, obviously, I think we got a little less than a month until that August 15th deadline, where as things stand, if Florida State, if nothing is agreed to prior to August 15th next month, they'll be in the ACC in 2025, as will Clemson. Kind of that's the date where if you want to be out the following year, you have to declare it by then. And I can't fathom Florida State being in a place financially to get out with what that would currently look like, with questions about their TV rights. So if they wanted that to happen in the next month, I think a settlement would have to happen. And considering we haven't really heard any progress on that front, I'm not convinced it will at this time.
Kurt Weiler, senior writer who covers Florida State football for Osceola Rivals and Rivals.com. Florida State over the past couple of seasons, Kurt, has been such a transfer-reliant team. You know, it's feast or famine. You know, a lot of guys coming in, a lot of guys going out. Do you get the sense that Mike Norvell is comfortable with staying in that sort of pattern and being a transfer type of head coach? Or do you see him wanting to kind of turn this thing back towards high school recruits and then using the portal to supplement?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think long-term he would even like to. I mean, obviously – They've scaled back the portal somewhat from where it was. They didn't take. I think they only took one in the post-spring window, when the thought was they might take more. And I think some of that was belief in what they have. I mean, they're taking 3 homegrown players, 3 non-transfers who they find out of high school to ACC kickoff. It feels like a bit of a statement about maybe where he wants things to go. It feels like that is still the more traditional path going forward. I do think this year they took as many transfers as they did because, I mean, A, they lose a lot. And B, it feels like this is an important year for Florida State. They're going to take a step back in some capacity. I can't fathom they're going to go 12-0. You can't rule it out, but I can't imagine they're going to go 12-0 again with all they're having to replace. But it feels important to not lose too much of that momentum. If the fall-off is to 9 or 10 wins, it doesn't feel that significant. You don't want the fall-off to be to 7 wins, because then the talk starts about like, oh, well, was that just all those factors coming together for kind of an anomaly season? So it feels like I do think going forward, I mean, the high school recruiting has improved the last few years in particular as they've gotten further away from COVID, and they've built more of those bonds. This was a staff when they got here didn't have a ton of bonds in the state of Florida with those high school coaches and high school prospects. But I think this year was important for them to kind of keep that momentum going, at least moderately, to go as heavy on transfers as they did.
Hey, Kurt, what was the overwhelming response from Florida State fans when DJ announced his commitment to Florida State?
Yeah, I think generally people were happy. Obviously, they were recruiting. They hosted both DJ and Cam Ward on visits, and I think they kind of were in that waiting period with both of them. And then when Cam Ward originally put out the video that he was declaring for the draft shortly after, Florida State took DJ, and then Cam Ward ended up changing his mind and going to Miami. I think there were some people who saw the ceiling of Cam Ward being a little higher, and I think that's fair, but I think the floor is also lower for him. I think DJ is DJ going to lead you to a bunch of success in the playoff? I'm not sure, but I think it was generally excitement. He was definitely a guy who pretty much wore on his sleeve. I mean, Florida State was the only interest the school he paid a ton of interest to. It felt like that's where he wanted to be, and I think there's something to be said for a guy who wants to be there. And we saw in the spring, I mean, we saw the potential. We saw, why he was a 5-star recruit, and I'm fascinated to see. And we saw what Mike Norvell and his staff did with multiple years of Jordan Travis and what they made him. I'm fascinated to see what they can do with 1 year of DJ Uyunglele. It's kind of a different proposition.
Joined right now on the show by Kurt Weiler from Osceola Rivals. I don't know how much time, Kurt, you got to spend watching DJU live at Clemson a couple of years ago. I know you've done your homework and gone back and watched a lot of film on him. How would you say that DJ has grown and matured in the last 18 months since he left Clemson?
Yeah, I think he talked pretty candidly about it. I think Oregon State was kind of good for him, very good for him, getting far away in that regard. I think that was a tough situation. Having to fill the shoes of a guy like Trevor Lawrence is not easy, and he had that early success and then had some struggles and maybe didn't always handle it the best. But I think he talked about kind of just the maturity of now being a experienced guy now going into year 5 in college football. I think has done wonders for him. I think Oregon State, learning a new offense helped him a lot, and just kind of, and now obviously learning a third offense at Florida State, I think made this transition easier for him. The arm talent has always been there. You see him flick his wrist, and the ball goes 65, 70 yards. It's pretty ridiculous how effortless it looks for him. But I think some of the more between the ears type stuff of being a quarterback is something that really Florida State has been pushing and challenging him on to try and get the most out of.
Hey, Kurt, I hope this doesn't happen, but let's just think hypothetically here. If the next 8 to 10 years go by and Florida State doesn't get back to the promised land of a national championship, will last year's debacle of Florida State not getting in be the event that caused Florida State or prevented Florida State from getting to their ultimate dream, their ultimate prized possession that would really dictate whether you consider Mike Norvell a staple, one of the GOATs of Florida State football or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of already, regardless of what happens going forward, regardless of what the future holds, I kind of feel like it's already viewed that way. It's just like, I think people are trying hard to not have it be a condemnation on Mike Norvell, and it shouldn't be, I would argue, because, I mean, they did everything in their power, and obviously Greg Sankey's still kind of taking some victory laps that he doesn't really need to take. But, yeah, I'm fascinated to see how this team handles that. There are, I mean, for all the guys they lost, there are a lot of guys from that team who are back this season. I think there were a few guys who kind of made an effort to return when maybe they had other plans because of that very fact and because they kind of felt like they had something to prove. There are some new guys too, some new faces. But for those returning guys, it does feel like, I mean, talk about it's hard to imagine a much better motivator. And for all people would talk about the Orange Bowl, I mean, there was no motivation whatsoever there. I think there's much more motivation now going into this brand new season to kind of show that wasn't a one-off flash in the pan.
Last year at Oregon State, Kurt, DJU, he passed for 2,600 yards, rushed for only 220 yards. But my big issue with seeing DJ and how he's going to fit in with the personnel that Florida State has this year in the receiving room, Hakeem Williams, Ja'Kai Douglas, Malik Benson, a couple of guys who all have some age on them, but who totaled last year fewer than 500 yards combined. Do you see that receiving room being a big liability, or do you expect them to really surprise a lot of people?
It is very much up in the air, if I'm being honest. I mean, there is a world where it maybe is a bit of a liability, and they badly missed Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson, and the unable to get. I mean, I'm not sure that guy was especially in the portal. I guess there were a few, but maybe they will regret not pushing harder for one of those established receivers in the portal. Because even a guy like Malik Benson, who was one of the stars of the spring and is exceptionally talented, I think could have a big role, isn't, like you said, doesn't have the most production at this level at the previous stop. So I think it is a lot of guys in that room who have very high ceilings and who could be great as soon as this season. But like you said, it's a lot of guys who on the whole are unproven. They're replacing a lot of their receiver production. I mean, I looked it up when I was writing the receiver preview for our website, and I knew it was a lot. And I think I even underestimated exactly how much it is that they're having to replace. And so that will certainly be something to monitor, because you're right. I mean, that could make things easier or harder for DJ, and kind of feels like it'll determine where this season goes and how successful they are.
Hey, Kurt, my last question for you. When you look at the schedule that will be here in, 30-something days now, 37 days away, the game with Clemson on October 5th, obviously that's the one that most Florida State fans are going to circle. The one in Ireland will be cool because it's overseas. But when you look at the schedule this year, is there a threat in your mind to this Florida State team going undefeated other than Clemson? I mean, Notre Dame's not bad, but it seems very, very favorable for the Noles.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm not thinking in that terms. Obviously, Clemson being at home this year, Florida being at home this year is a plus. I mean, that Notre Dame game, I think, is circled as kind of one of the better non-con games of the year, of the season, potentially in November. I think when you look at that trip to Miami, I think a lot of people, there's some unprovenness about Miami. I think Miami opens the season at Florida. That'll be interesting to see exactly what this team is. But I think with Cam Ward, with Damian Martinez, the running back from Oregon State, DJ's former teammate, I think there is a lot of people who are eyeing Miami as maybe a team that makes a jump. It feels like an important year for Mario Cristobal. Those are the ones I would circle, and it is fairly backloaded. You're right. I think the interesting thing about that first month or so, the first 5 games really, when you look at Georgia Tech, when you look at Boston College, when you look at Memphis and Cal and SMU, Florida State should be favored, and I would say probably all 5 of those games. We'll see about SMU, obviously, it being on the road. But the thing is, it feels like very much a situation where, yes, they should be favored, but if they don't have their A game, I think any of those 5 teams could beat them. I think there is there's no slam dunk. They don't have the early season FCS game or even like a team where they're just a lot better than. So it definitely feels like a nice test of the consistency of this team, and it ramps up, but it's by no means a cakewalk before they get to that real tough stretch that starts with that Clemson game.
Kurt Weiler, senior writer for Osceola Rivals, joining us here on the Fan Upstate. Kurt, does Chief Osceola, Renegade, the Flaming Spear still give you goosebumps every time you see it?
Not every time, but in those big game atmospheres, I mean, when it's like Doak, to me, Doak week in and week out is Doak Campbell Stadium's not like the most electric atmosphere in college football stadium, but when a big game hits, it is up there. Like it is at the very top of the ones I've been in for like that big, highly touted game, prime time night at Doak. I mean, that it is electric.
That's a good way to put it.
I don't think Cole and I have really discussed this on the show. I mean, I look at the whole thing with Osceola, Renegade, and the Spear as the undisputed best entrance in college football. In my opinion, maybe Southern Cal is second with the Trojans stabbing the sword into midfield. In your opinion, what is the second best? If you do think that what Florida State does is the best,
man, there's some good ones. I mean, Enter Sandman is at Virginia Tech is great. Like you said, USC is great. I mean, everybody. I mean, a whiteout at Penn State. Yeah. Haven't experienced it in person, but it hits. I mean, I'm a big fan of the waving the Children's Hospital, the new thing at Iowa in the last few years.
Yeah.
I was proud. I will say I've played a little EA amongst the busy as things are starting to ramp up. The new college football game, and they nailed the Florida State, all of that. I was pretty impressed with the job they did. I know one of their main developers is a Florida State grad, so it makes sense maybe that he might want to put a little extra focus on making sure they nailed that, and they did.
So as somebody who is a longtime reporter for Florida State, have you noticed, are there any issues with anything surrounding Florida State in the game? We had people reach out and tell us that it's like for South Carolina, the towel's the wrong color. We've seen that, with with Stanford, they've used the wrong logo in a place or two, or have they just nailed perfectly everything about Florida State?
No, I haven't noticed anything like that. There are a few, obviously, I think there are a few players missing. I know Hakeem Williams, the guy we talked about, isn't in the game, and that's just, I think, because he didn't opt in. It was the whole opt-in thing. I imagine it might happen later, but I mean, they had a hard job getting all those stadiums and everything ready. So it may not be perfect all around, but I think they did a very good job with Doak.
Kurt, good stuff on the Florida State entrance. I grew up, my aunt is a big Florida State fan. I grew up going to a lot of Florida State games, except they were in the Chris Winkie era. So when you talk about that inconsistency, yeah, I hear you there. Hey, great stuff, man. We appreciate you hopping on the show. And look, let's do it again soon.
Sounds good, guys. So thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Kurt.
That is Kurt Weiler, senior writer, covers Florida State football for Osceola Rivals, rivals.com, doing a good job covering Florida State. And he says, I take it with a grain of salt, Diesel, about the comments about them being left out.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting comment by Kurt there.
Yeah, when you contrast that to Florida State superfan Melissa Level from Ingles that we have on the show, very different tone when it comes to talking about being left out of the playoff. When we come back, Cole, you said it.
It got a little dark in here all of a sudden, Diesel. A big black cloud has surfaced. Don't know what the weather is where you are. Just stay safe. We did have some weather alerts earlier with some hail, maybe. Not the curse word, but those big, sometimes golf ball size hail. You ever seen it that big?
Not golf ball size. I've seen quarter size, penny size hail. That'll do some
dangerous
damage.
stuff there, man. So stay safe wherever you are. Let us know
I got
where
a
you're.
steel hood on my Jeep. It'll bounce right off. You can't dent a Jeep.
Let us know where you're listening from. And if it's bad your way, you never know, these summertime storms, they can just pop up all of a sudden. Big thanks to Kurt Weiler of Osceola. Did I say that right? Osceola Rivals.
Osceola
Okay.
Rivals, yeah.
I was making sure it is rivals.com, their website, but Osceola Rivals. Big thanks to Kurt. I just had a brain fart there, completely forgot where he was or who he was with, rather. But really, really good conversation there about Florida State. And I want to get into some conversations from SEC Media Day, but I do want to get to a text first. During that interview from the 203, texter asked, do people actually think running down the hill and touching a rock is a cool entrance? Honestly asking, I thought it was a joke. I don't know if you're a South Carolina fan or not, texter, but I think it is the general consensus, and I know Kurt didn't mention it there, but I think the general consensus of people, Diesel, tell me if you agree or disagree, I think it's a good entrance. I wouldn't say it's an all-time great entrance in terms of the hill and the rock.
Look, everybody's got their entry into their stadium, right?
Yeah.
Some just pile straight out of the tunnels. Some, blow off a bunch of smoke and they come out through the smoke. East Carolina comes out through purple haze, purple smoke. So it's definitely a very unique way to enter the field from outside of the stadium. I mean, I'm trying to think who else does anything like that. Who else enters their field from outside of their stadium? And I really can't think of any.
No, it's interesting.
And so it's that long build up and then cannon goes off. They all run down the hill. Dabo sprints at full speed. One of these days, somebody's going to roll an ankle and go tumbling down the hill. But no, it's definitely unique.
It is unique.
It definitely is.
All right. I want to ask a question about something that we heard, and you and I have talked a lot this week about SEC Media Days. I'm agree for the most part, Diesel. I'm in agreement with Nick Saban on Georgia and Texas being the favorite to be the SEC championship game. However, I do want to just maybe propose that we're maybe counting Alabama out too quick. Yeah, they got a new coach, but the quarterback's still there. They're still full of 5 stars.
Jalen Milroe, kind of a stud last year.
Really, really good quarterback in Jalen Milroe. So I just think that while Texas is really good, Quinn Ewers is phenomenal. We know Georgia's going to be Georgia. I do think that maybe Nick might be doing it for another reason, but maybe we are counting Alabama out a little too early.
Jalen Milroe, 2,800 yards, 23 touchdowns, 6 interceptions last year.
Oh, is that
13th best QBR in college football. He's a rising junior. Look, I think there's a lot of continuity with this roster from last year. Certainly they lost a couple of guys, which is going to happen to every roster every year, right? But such a huge core of this roster stayed intact. And you know what's interesting? I heard some interviews from a couple of players, Alabama players, at SEC Media Days. And Kalen DeBoer, you tell me if you think this is a good idea or not, or in what ways it can be a bad idea, because I don't really see a ton of them. Kalen DeBoer is giving a lot of his players free reign to call Nick Saban and talk to him during the season. So he's not doing well, that's your old coach, I'm your new coach now, no contact with him, right?
Yeah.
So specifically, and it may be more of a, hey, if you need to reach out to him before the season starts, do it. Just do me a favor and don't do it after the season has started, especially because, well, Nick Saban's an analyst and that could change some things with his analysis. But a lot of these guys, they signed up to play for Nick Saban and they decided to stay even though they had a new head coach. And it was specifically surrounding, I don't remember which player it was, who cracked the joke that Coach Saban taught us not to let people who live in their mama's basement affect the way we feel.
Sure.
So why would I let somebody who plays golf all day change how I feel? Which is funny. It's a great line.
It is great.
But, that player also said, look, we love Coach Saban. We respect him a lot. We have free reign. Kalen DeBoer has given us free reign to talk to him.
I think that's the good way to go about it. I really do. But my only thing with DeBoer is I think there's a general consensus that people don't expect Alabama to continue the success of the Nick Saban era. So, am I saying here, Diesel, that DeBoer can do what Saban did? No, because Saban is the GOAT. He changed the game. However, to act like there's going to be a significant drop-off, I don't know that there is. When you have a guy who was 67-3, won 3 NAIA national titles, right? Went 9-3 at Fresno State, 25-3 in 2 seasons at Washington, national title appearance. This guy has a lot of the same DNA in him that Nick Saban had. There's a run of 104-12, Diesel, that Kalen DeBoer went on as a head coach. 104-12 was a run in terms of his record. He knows how to win. So, I just don't think that he's going to go from Fresno or NAIA to Fresno to Washington, Bama, and just forget how to build a culture. I do not think in the next 2 to 3 years you'll see a significant drop-off with Alabama.
There's not a lot of coaches who could follow a Nick Saban, and you're right. There's no guarantee that Kalen DeBoer is going to be able to do what Nick Saban did. However, I do think Kalen DeBoer is uniquely set up to run this thing as close to the way Nick Saban did as possible, and keep the level of success high. Kalen DeBoer has not fallen off at all in recruiting. I think he's that coach that a lot of these dudes are going to respect. He's not a completely different culture guy from I mean, could you imagine if Alabama had hired somebody while he was still a hot coaching name like Matt Rule? Vastly changes the culture of that program, and the fan base is like, whoa, who is this dude? Or imagine them hiring an Eli Drinkwitz after a Nick Saban. It's a completely different culture. It's a shock. But this is not a culture shock. I really believe in Kalen DeBoer's ability to keep this thing operating at a high level. And, hey, there might be a season or two where they win 10 games instead of 11 games or 9 games instead of 11 games. But then I think they're going to be right back. I think Alabama's going to be a player for a long time.
So I agree. The only thing that I think separates in the long-term big picture, the only thing that I think separates DeBoer and Saban is the consistency and the level of success that Saban had. What I mean is, under Nick Saban at Alabama, they were in the hunt, in the picture, Diesel, every single season. There were 2 seasons where they were out of the picture, right? Cam Newton, and also, oh, by the way, when they had to go against Joe Burrow and maybe the best LSU team ever, one of the best college football teams ever. So other than those 2, they were in the postseason every single year. If you told me that we still only had a 4-team playoff, I might be concerned. I really might. However, I've said it once. If I've said it once, I've said it a million times. I think the 12-team playoff is the best thing that could have happened to Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah, Alabama's going to be stacked for an awful long time. Kalen DeBoer is that dude who has found success everywhere he's ever been. And to count that program out with the amount of money that they have and the passion that fan base has, we're not all of a sudden going to see 10,000 empty seats at Bryant-Denny Stadium. That's not happening. So the culture there is going to stay as strong as it ever was.
I just wonder though, if somebody came on the show and said, "Hey, here's why," let's I guess play devil's advocate for a minute. Let's pretend that there's going to be a drop-off. What reasons could you and I come up with that set Alabama back from being where they have been the last few years? If we have to come up with a list or just try to think of a few, maybe the number one thing that people would say, and you're welcome to play along as well, 71307, start your text with the word fan. We're also live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I guess the number one answer would be there's only one Nick Saban. And I get that. But outside of that.
Yeah, but that's not tangible, right? That's just a feeling that you get.
Yeah, but that's right. Outside of Nick Saban, why will Bama not be the same Bama we've seen the last 10 years? And I get it. Nick Saban had a ton to do with that.
Well, the only thing that I could think of still staying inside of, well, it sounds weird to say, inside of Nick Saban is a result of what that player said. He said, we have free reign to go to reach out to Nick Saban. So what if there is, whether it starts small or it's a handful of key guys who they want to go back to Nick Saban for their coaching. And so they're not entirely bought in to Kalen DeBoer, right? You know, the terminology changes a little bit. Or they just had such a strong relationship with Nick Saban that instead of going to their coach, their current coach, they call up their old coach.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to be able to do that in season or not. If they have the discipline to not do that. So I'm just thinking, are there opportunities for confidence to erode in Kalen DeBoer and have guys constantly sort of be thinking about their ex?
And it could be, and that's the whole point of this little game is to try to think of what could disrupt it. I would say off the top of my head, Diesel, the only thing that I think could stop the Alabama train within the near future would be not having the coaching tree and the coaching staff that Saban built, right? Mm-hmm. We know a lot of assistant coaches came through that program and went on to be Kirby Smart, Lane Kiffin. The list goes on and on. Dabo spent time as a player, right, at Alabama. The coaching tree that Alabama's formed, it will never be replicated. The only thing that I could think maybe till we'll see a Alabama drop-off is two things. Nick's specialization at the defensive back position that put players in the league, maybe that hurting the team, and then the coaching staff not being as strong, because you can't really say it was always consistent because Saban had guys leave all the time, right?
Yeah.
They had guys going to the NFL, going to colleges, going to Georgia, going here, going there. So it wasn't the consistency like Dabo had, but it was more of, hey, we've got this reputation of being the best.
Nick Saban was able to lose really good position coaches and then replace them with somebody who was just as good, if not better. Can Kalen DeBoer do the same thing?
That's the $1 million question.
Is there an increase? I don't know how many, without looking it up. It's bad radio to do it live. How many guys has Alabama been losing to the transfer portal?
Yeah.
And what if Alabama does drop off win total wise to 9 wins or 8 wins, even if it's just in the short term? Could that create sort of a chain reaction where guys say, well, we're only winning 9 games at Alabama now, or we only won 8 games last year. I want to try my hand in the transfer portal and go somewhere else. Alabama seems to be certainly capable of replacing those guys with more 4- and 5-star guys. So I don't think they're going to be at a huge risk of losing a 5-star guy and having to replace him with a 3-star guy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's really going to be a thing, but it's possible. It's possible that some guys say, well, this is not the Alabama that I signed up for, so I'm out.
Yeah, and the coaching staff's going to be really intriguing. Nick Sheridan's the OC. He was the tight ends coach with DeBoer at Washington. Kane Womack, the DC and linebackers coach. He, last year was at South Alabama as the head coach. So some new coordinators for DeBoer. a new DC, who was a tight ends coach with him at Washington, a new OC, associate head coach Freddie Roach, also brand new. He was an assistant, but he wasn't the associate. So that's probably where I'd hang my hat. That's probably where I would write down, highlight, put a asterisk beside of the coaching staff. To your point, I agree with what you said in terms of the replacement. How will they be able to replace like Saban did? Because the bottom line is DeBoer can still go get guys, but nobody else has that Saban drawl of being able to pick up the phone and get whoever he wants because he's Nick Saban. As good as Kalen DeBoer may be, he'll never have that. So I think Bama is as fascinating now as they've ever been in terms of big picture because it's the what happens now with Nick Saban.
So Kalen DeBoer is 49. So he's not a young coach, but he's a relatively young coach.
Sure.
I mean, imagine a world where Kalen DeBoer stays around at Alabama for 10, 12, 15 years.
Well, he could.
And has them built back into a juggernaut. I mean, clearly people, students, players, coaches, fans, they buy what he's selling.
And why would he leave?
Right. They buy what he's selling because he's done such a fantastic job. Now he's at the pinnacle of college football.
You said he's 49?
49. He's had a ton of success selling something, and it's working, right? So things may be a little different from the way Nick Saban did them.
You've got to think that 10 years from now, him almost being 60, you would think he's still there then, right?
Yeah.
10 years from now?
Unless he rattles off like 3 or 4 national championships and says, you know what?
I'm done.
Or
goes to NFL.
Yeah, I mean, Nick coached until he's 72 years old. I don't know exactly how old he was when he retired, when his birthday was.
Yeah.
But Nick coached into his 70s. So, I mean, what if Kalen DeBoer coaches another 20 years? And he would to be at Alabama for another 20 years, which would mean he's won a lot of titles.
Yeah. But Bama doesn't want a guy that's going to be there for 5 or 6 years, right? They want a guy that's going to be there. You know, Saban was there a long time.
Where do you go? I mean, Kalen DeBoer and his personality type, I don't know that he's an NFL type of guy. He might be, but I mean, is the NFL a step up if you're getting paid $10 million a year to coach at Alabama?
What do you gain? You know, what do you gain from going to Alabama to the NFL?
There's a lot of NFL coaches who probably would love to coach at Alabama. That might be a step up.
Sure.
Hey, when we come back, Cole, we'll take one more quick look around the sports world, get you caught back up with some of the latest on our Daily Wires. Next on the Fan Upstate. Putting a bow on show number 81, Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. We wrap it up today with another look around the sports world. It's our Daily Wires. This is the buzz happening for you. Cole, everybody freaks out over preseason lists. I don't know why. Somebody in a room put together a list, and then the internet completely freaks out about it. Well, ESPN has just released its list of the top 25 college football stadiums. And of course, everybody's going to agree on this list. There's not going to be any debate.
No,
everybody's going to be totally
be?
fine with the list. So here's what ESPN thinks are the top 25 schools or top 25 stadiums in America. Ranked stadium experiences. Number 1, Baton Rouge and their Death Valley at LSU.
Hard to debate that one.
That's an easy one. Very, very solid choice. Rose Bowl was number 2.
That's probably what I would put 1.
I definitely want to go out to a Rose Bowl game. God, just the beautiful sights around the Rose Bowl.
Honestly,
it can't be beaten. Number 3, Michigan Stadium. I've been there twice. Had a good time 50% of the time that I was there.
I think that's a good spot for Michigan.
That's a weird stadium because you don't realize when you're walking up to it from the outside just how huge it is because it's set down into the ground.
Yeah.
So when you walk up, what you see above ground is only like the top third of the stadium. And then it goes way down into the ground from there. Number 4, Notre Dame Stadium. That's definitely a bucket list for me.
I've never been, obviously, but
do they still have the wood bleachers at Notre Dame Stadium?
Oh, sure.
Or did they finally replace
your
those? Yeah. I mean, touchdown Jesus, Notre Dame. That's not inside the stadium. It's outside the stadium. But still, that's definitely a bucket list for me. And number 5 on their list, Beaver Stadium at Penn State. That one's weird to me because I don't like the way it's shaped. It's an ugly stadium.
5 in the country?
It's an ugly stadium.
Maybe 10?
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Without going down the entire list, Clemson came in at number 11. They were directly behind. Let's see, who was number 10 on this?
How'd you leave them out of the top 10?
Well, we had the texters say that the entrance is dumb. So, which is it? Is it good? Is it bad? Let's see. Alabama came in at 9. Neyland Stadium at Tennessee was 10. Clemson was 11. Army was 12. That was the highest ranked group of 5 stadium on this list. I've never really looked and watched too many Army games on TV, but I think
Navy's the only one I've ever watched.
Well, that's not even at Army Stadium. Yeah,
that's the point.
I think it's right there on the river, if I'm not incorrect. I think it's actually that's what kind of makes it unique. App State number 23. How about that?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. The Lakers got their very first win of the summer as Bronny had 12 points in the Lakers' first win. The WNBA just signed a huge new deal, $200 million per year. There's a report that the WNBA will receive. The Fever, Caitlin Clark, had a WNBA record 19 assists and a loss. Round 1 of the Open Championship was today. Tiger shot at 8 over 79 in round 1.
Tiger.
Very much in danger of missing the cut. The crazy thing is, it's not that bad when you consider the fact that Bryson DeChambeau shot 5 over, and he sits pretty low down the leaderboard as well.
Tiger's just, man, I hate it for him. He just needs to go ahead and hang it up.
This was fun. On the very first hole, Jamie Montojo eagled the par 4 first.
Sounds like me out there.
Yeah, he on his second shot, he laid it within about 15 feet shy of the hole, 2 bounce in the hole. That's a great way to start.
Not too
when
shabby.
You're starting -2,
Jamie,
after 1 hole. Major League Baseball is back tomorrow. The Atlanta Braves still have 67 games left. They're 53-42, 8.5 games back in the NL East. Cole, who will they play tomorrow?
They are at home tomorrow against it's a team from California. God, just looked. Is it the Padres?
If they're a top half of the league team, they have a very good chance of beating them because they tend to beat really good teams. They'll play the Cardinals. They're back at it against the Cardinals, who are 50-46.
I was going to say 500.
24. They're 24-24 on the road. The Braves are 29-17 at home. I believe they lost 2 out of 3 against the Cardinals when they just played a series against them a week or so ago. The mayor of Paris did actually get into the Seine River to demonstrate its safety. Still not going to see me doing it. That's dirty. Brad Brunell, Mike Noonan, Eddie Radwanski, Eric Bakich and Kelly Hester all agreed to new contracts with Clemson University today, so your coaches aren't going anywhere.
Let's go. Final show of the week tomorrow. We'll do it again, 3 to 7 p.m. Tolo.